Hello, everyone, and welcome to another small screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian Musha. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hello.
Back in person today.
I made it.
Lots going on here.
Too
The
much.
search for the job continues. A little discouraging. If you're following me on Twitter, you might have seen me complaining about how none of the jobs on
Oh.
LinkedIn have a pay scale,
Yeah.
and it is so stupid. It's garbage. I'm not, as I said on my tweet, I'm not applying to your job for the love of account management or whatever it is.
Right.
I need to know how much you're planning on paying
Yeah,
me,
that's fair.
or at least a range.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my frustration. She's still planning a wedding, so that's a whole different
Yeah, it's a
thing.
lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I was saying I had to go to Costco and wholesale today, and it was a fucking nightmare.
Here's the thing with Costco. There's never a time it's not busy.
It's
It's
always
all.
busy.
It doesn't matter what day at what
Actually,
time you go.
It wasn't that bad today. We went at 10 a.m. and today's Tuesday, so it was a pretty good time to go. Wednesday?
Today's Wednesday.
I don't know what day it is.
That's okay. There's another person today that also said today was
Oh,
Tuesday.
okay.
So maybe something's in
It's
the
not
air.
just
I don't
me.
know.
I might lose
Yeah.
my voice by the end of this podcast too, so just so everybody knows. Sorry.
It's okay. We have water. We'll be okay.
Yeah.
We'll try to keep this under 2.5
I feel like the
hours.
vocal fry is going to be bad on my end today. It's just, I feel like I've been talking for 3 days, just telling people what to do, and I don't know. Yeah.
Ooh, big boss with the hot sauce over here. Anyway, that's enough personal trauma. We're gonna talk about the Acolyte season 1, episode 7.
Yeah.
Choices.
Mhm.
Choice. Just choice. No, not. There's not multiple choices to be
No.
made here. Only one choice. And
Well, I said there was going to be, that this episode was going to be just a one.
yeah, but you thought it was being
I
called
thought it was going to be called Fate, but
Yeah.
it's choice. So it's destiny and choice.
because I think I was thinking about
Which kinda
this
makes sense.
on your behalf,
Mhm.
which is that destiny and fate are the same thing,
That's true.
or essentially the
I
same
thought,
thing. They're kind of like
Fate is like one of them's worse. Like if you're destined, it's
I feel like
almost,
it's just
pre-planned out, but your fate is like, yeah, that's true. Fate and destiny.
I feel
are
like
the same thing.
I feel like it's the same,
It's true.
or or close enough that they
Yeah.
can use interchangeably. Whereas all the other multi-title, or like even the single titles, had another episode that they could
Yeah.
like contrast off
Yeah.
of, and this one's contrast obviously destiny.
Mhm.
The distinction between destiny, like if you believe in destiny, you don't believe you have free will,
Yeah.
right? So I guess you could have called this will or
Mhm.
something.
But I mean, the
yeah.
title makes sense for like
Yeah.
what happened throughout the episode. So.
I just feel like it's an underwhelming title ultimately,
Yeah.
but it's also an underwhelming episode.
Mhm.
So
I think
comes
it's
with the
It's because of where it is.
yeah. I think we both agreed. I think a few episodes back we talked about how it would be problematic if
Yeah.
this episode fell
Is the
into the
penultimate.
last,
Yeah.
the penultimate episode, which ultimately means that the finale
Yeah.
has so much ground to cover that it doesn't instill a lot of confidence, and we don't have a lot of. I don't have a lot of faith, given what we've learned from, these Disney television shows or Disney Plus television shows, that they're going to have the ability to stick the landing.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
much more likely that they won't, which is, I think, frustrating, especially
Yeah.
because we had such good momentum coming out of the last
We
3
did.
episodes.
And yeah, I feel like the momentum was really kind of lost with this one, unfortunately. Like, I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I forget what happened last week now because we
right.
went back in time and like we didn't go anywhere else
remember-
after.
You don't remember all that
I do.
the flirting that
sexual
was going
tension
on?
and, like,
yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's such a stark contrast between like last episode and the way it ended with her putting the mask on. It was like so cool, and then this
Right.
it's like, oh, I'm not like,
Womp womp.
not that I don't
is the
care,
sound
but
that-
like I don't
yeah.
really care.
It just doesn't. It's just poor pacing.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel bad saying it, but yeah.
I mean, listen, we I think out there on the internets, there's a lot of like, unless you you either have to hate something or love something. There's not a lot of room in the middle for like refined conversation.
Yeah.
It's like either you're a shill or you're a hater,
Right, yeah.
right? I feel like we've always tried to take a middle ground.
Mm.
I think we are willing to give Star Wars a little bit more benefit of the doubt than maybe some of the haters obviously
Well, yes.
do,
Yeah.
right?
I try and be positive.
Like our friend here on IMDb, who reviewed this? Jesse Pinkman 76.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah,
Jesse
taking a
Pinkman,
break,
yeah.
taking a break from making meth.
Yeah.
Gave this a 2 out of 10 and titled it "Speechless," saying, "quote No spoilers in this review because you need to experience this absolute tripe of an episode yourself. Must be British because I
I
don't
think that says
people
trip.
this trip of an episode. You're right. Well, then that makes okay. These people really don't know how to write anything. Or this all just one big parody / prank. This episode feels like it stumbles to keep up with the plot of episode 3, which it shows the other perspective of, when episode 3 was already one of the funniest things I've seen on TV.
What?
So, yeah, I don't know. The writers think that they can justify large actions in this episode with tiny surface-level setups that are never explored. The part with Torben and his motivation is the main example. I actually think that's better explained than this person's giving credit for.
Yeah.
Because, again, we don't need to be spoon-fed anything,
No.
but we'll get into that as we get into the recap. They continue. The one thing I will say is that I think the 4 Jedi characters are the best ones. Then again, this is only the actors not writing. I won't say anything else about the episode. Just go watch it and have a laugh, then cleanse your eyes after with something good. Crazy contrast that this episode releases after the House of Dragon blessed us all last Sunday. Yeah, that was a crazy episode of House of the Dragon, no doubt.
I have not been
We're not here to
watching.
talk. It's wild. It's very good. One of the things we talked about, Game of Thrones being this like high watermark for television. What do they do really well? It's characters in rooms having conversations. We get to learn about motivations, and we get to analyze characters and how they interact with each other. And that's what Star Wars is doing really well the last 2 episodes.
Okay.
Well, maybe last episode specifically, and we had after the action-heavy episode of 2 weeks ago. And then we step into this kind of like mushy middle ground that we got this week, which felt like it had the action was okay, poorly motivated ultimately, and then
lots of just confusing parts.
It's supposed to be this big reveal, but I don't feel like that much is actually revealed that we didn't already know.
Really.
The big reveal is what the choice Saul had to make.
Yeah, there's a few things that he does in this episode where you're like, oh shit, okay, but yeah, then there's other things like even when I got here, Julian was finishing his recap.
Yeah,
we had a little bit of
convo
about a couple of things that were like happening near the end of the episode, and we're like, what the fuck? Like, what just happened there?
Yeah, this is supposed to give us like more clarity, but it just ultimately poses more questions in a lot of places, and that's frustrating, I think, if you're a viewer of this show.
Yeah.
Which is my main takeaway for this episode, which is that it's frustrating. This is a frustrating episode in a series, a season of a show that felt like it was kind of heading in the right direction. It was hitting the right beats, and now it kind of stumbles back to a little bit where it was early in the season. And I think that's unfortunate, but given that we knew that this flashback episode was coming, I think it's a matter of timing versus the actual execution of the episode itself. I think if this had come sooner to the episode 3, giving us a better perspective. The other thing, I guess, is it's like we see so much of the events of episode 3 like shot for shot that it would have, if it had come too soon after, it would have felt a little redundant.
That's what I was
also
thinking too, because I'm like, there isn't really another place to put it. You can't put it like after episode, because what is it, 7?
Yeah.
So you can't put it after episode 5.
No.
Because that would have just been horrendous. You can't really put it after episode 4 because of how 4 leads right into 5. Like,
well, it means that the first episode should have been maybe episode 3 should have maybe been episode 1.
Yeah.
Right? And then this should have been episode 3.
Yeah. And then you get, that's true. But again,
right?
Not to reorganize.
We're not writing the show.
Like we
but
say,
but if we were, that's the change that I would
But I
make.
understand the conversation that was probably had in the writing room, because they have these flashbacks. It's like, where do we put them?
Right.
Like, I'm sure when you shoot a show, you don't necessarily, in editing, like,
sometimes you do that. There was another show.
When it comes to flashbacks, I feel like you don't always know exactly where you're gonna put them. Maybe you do.
Well, I think generally you have a good idea.
Yeah, that's fair.
Sometimes you write something, shoot something, and you realize, this isn't working, and then you need to move things around and rejigger things.
But I feel like it's usually like beginning and ends of episodes. It's not necessarily.
I was trying to think of what show we had watched recently on Disney Plus that had its first episode was originally supposed to be much later in the season. And they had reworked it for that to be the case. I can't remember what it was, but that's something that we saw recently.
That came out, it was like maybe a year ago, and you could watch it in like any order. All the episodes had colors. Was it called Spectrum, or
I don't know.
It was about like a heist, and you could watch it in any order. So Netflix kind of like just picked an order for you, and you could watch it.
That's a cool idea.
So there's a few different, like not everybody, but there was like a few different ways you could watch it.
But then that show is built around that concept, right?
So it was really cool. I was like, oh, that's so interesting.
God, I'm just trying to remember what show it was. That it was another Disney Plus show, I'm pretty sure. Either way, it's ultimately when that happens, it typically feels clunky because obviously it wasn't designed originally in that way to be like that.
Gotcha.
It's unclear if that was the case in this, where like they want to start with episode, the flashback episode, and then take us into the murder mystery, or they thought maybe that's not working. We want to start with them right away with the murder mystery stuff.
I don't know. It's so hard.
Even though it wasn't a murder mystery, really, because it wasn't a whodunit. We know who did it. It was a why done it, as they say on the internet.
Yeah.
But like, it would have given us a lot more understanding about the why if we'd seen the flashback first. Anyway, that's a lot of nitpicking. We'll get into this a little bit more. I'll kind of go through some of my thoughts before we get into the recap. Before we do that, quick reminder, follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and head over to our website, TowerBabble.ca, to find everything we do. Once the Acolyte's over next week, we'll probably take a short break, and then I'll return. I'll get Jeremy back on the show, and we'll do a couple of more traditional Tower Babble podcasts where we cover a few more things, including, obviously, at the end of the month, we're going to have Wolverine and Deadpool to talk about, and a few of those other kind of big stories. There's also some other news that we want to cover. So look forward to that. But in the meantime, it's Star Wars Central right here on Small Screen Star Wars. Star Wars Oreos.
Yeah.
Let's do a little sidebar.
Okay, yeah, we can do a sidebar.
So Kara had gone on a trip to the U.S. and had gone to Target and picked up Star Wars Oreos. And so the fun thing with the Star Wars... Do you want to tell them what the fun gimmick with the Star Wars Oreos is?
How I figured out how you can tell?
No, not that part.
Okay.
Just the I guess...
They're light side and dark side.
Yeah, light side, dark side
so you
ones.
don't know what they are until you open the package. Unless you're...
I wish they were mixed. Like, you got a little bit of both.
Right? But
in
no,
each.
that's the whole point. It's like, they just want you to have to buy more. It's like it's like a marketing gimmick, obviously.
It's a Pokemon Red and Blue situation all over again.
But they're cute. I don't know, if you follow us on Twitter, you can see, because we had a bit of a Twitter conversation about it. Because we were laughing at some
Did I
of the
post the
faces.
picture of Dooku?
You did
on
the Twitter thread, because I was talking about it. So I'm like, well, now I need an Oreos budget for my wedding, because I have to have light side and dark side Oreos.
Yeah, because you're having a Star Wars themed wedding.
I kind of am, a little bit. Just a touch.
Oops.
Just a little touch.
How'd that happen?
Yeah, I don't know, right? Who would have thought?
Yeah.
But no, it's cool. There's some of them are super funny. Like the faces do look.
Oh man,
crazy.
The Dooku one is
The
hilarious.
Dooku one's
to me.
wild. The Emperor Palpatine looks kind of squishy too.
Yeah.
It's like a hood.
Yeah.
With a little squishy face. But like, there's a Jabba the Hutt. It's sick. The Grievous one.
Some of them are okay. The
Yeah.
Grievous one is good. Yes, agreed. Yeah.
It's cool. If you want to know a trick on how to.
They kind of taste like shit though. I don't really like.
The same. They have.
I don't really like
sugar
the
crystals in them that are supposed to be kyber crystals.
Oh, I didn't know
That's
that.
like crunchy, like. Sugar
Okay,
crystals.
to be honest, can I just make a confession here on air?
Yeah.
I kind of hate the filling in Oreos. I kind of wish it was just the chocolate wafer.
That's a weird take. Usually people are like the opposite. They're like, oh, the chocolate tastes like dust, and like the only thing that's
Yeah, I get that. I'm into the fake dust chocolate.
Yeah, all right.
Which is why I think you
Aren't
ever
they
get like
vegan?
the Oreo thins, yeah, because they're not made of anything real.
Yeah.
It's made out of actual sawdust, dyed and flavored like chocolate, and then
delicious, so.
yeah, I mean they make the best McFlurries.
Oh yeah,
and
exactly.
Blizzards,
like
and stuff.
like ice cream cake, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
that's what it's best for. But the thins, if you get the Oreo thins, it's less filling, and like I feel like the for me the like ratio is more in my favor.
Do you want to know something diabolical? I buy the thins, but the mint ones, and I put them in the freezer, and they're delicious.
They're like little like the little what are they called, cookies?
Peppermint patties, or
the ones
like
you get
the
from
Girl Guides ones.
the Girl Guide
Guides
cookies.
Suck
Yeah.
butt. Now I bought them
They
this
do
year.
they?
And
They
they're
suck
so bad.
butts?
They suck real butt.
Oh
They
no!
taste like straight oil. They're not good. They
So
switched
that's-
companies, and they're
That's so
trash.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Okay, because that was really the only thing that it was worth getting from all the other
they're
style
bad.
cookies were gross already.
Whoever made that decision, you fucked up. They're terrible. But
It's all in the name of profit
But
or
yeah.
something. I don't know.
But yeah, here, if you follow us, if not follow us, if you subscribe to our Patreon, I'll tell
Yes.
you how to find out whether they're light side or dark side.
Ooh, there you go.
Oreos,
Yeah,
if
okay.
you really
In the
wanna know.
Discord, we'll put it in the Discord, which is
Yeah.
of course
I'll put
exclusive
the hack
Patreon.
that I found out because I bought an obscene amount and I
She figured it
out
out.
a way to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, but
before
we
you
won't
open
reveal.
them.
We won't reveal it just
No.
to everybody. Yeah, you have to
Discord
be.
only.
You have to be a Discord member, which of course you can be automatically by going to patreon.com/TowerBabbleCast, and for as little as $5 a month,
Yeah.
you don't just get hacks for Oreos, but you also get a free monthly film club. We do a monthly
Yeah.
film club. Last month we did Conspiracy Theory, not a great movie, but this month we're doing Twister. Obviously, in honor of Twisters coming out right
I
away.
just saw the trailer for that, and it's like a fire tornado.
Oh, yeah,
I
there's
was
a fire tornado.
"Oh,
Yeah, I know.
okay."
Twins!
Yeah.
Twins! I love, that's my, and that's when I think of twins in the Acolyte, I think of that line from Twister, the Twister trailer,
Yeah.
Twister's trailer. So yeah, look forward to that. I haven't seen that movie since the 90s, so
It's a good one.
we'll talk about that. Also, obviously, all very apropos of the time where we're in this climate crisis, where summers are hotter, winters are colder, and everything sucks all the time. Okay, yeah, sorry about your son. I mean, who knows what kind of world they're going to grow up in at this point.
He'll figure it out.
Yeah,
They'll change
maybe he'll be the one to figure out
Fix things.
like all the
What is he? Gen Alpha, I think, is what his.
You're gonna have to tell me on that
I
one.
think that would be. I don't know anymore. But yeah, it's up to them. Gen Z's got it. They'll fix it. They.
That's what everyone hopes, that the next generation will
got
figure
it.
out what we fucked up. But like, that was a really funny tweet I saw the other day, or I don't know, maybe somebody showed it to me. It was just like, let's play Millennium Monopoly, where you have no money,
Yep.
you can afford nothing, the board is on fire for some
Yeah.
reason, and everything is your
and
fault.
everything is your fault. And that's how you start adulthood.
Yeah, that's how you start. Yeah, that's fun.
Just like, yeah. Exactly. We're trying. We're building sustainability things here, but then
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, exactly.
It's up to Gen Z to take it from there.
But that's okay. Well, that's enough depression for one day. We'll just switch gears
Yeah.
and talk about
Make
Star
believe.
Wars. Yeah, to help distract us. Okay, so just quick on additional thoughts on overall feeling on the episode. As I said before, frustrating for a variety of reasons, including where it falls into the season, the actual pacing of this episode, the quote-unquote reveals that we get that I think are largely underwhelming or extremely predictable.
Yeah.
And then, in general, there are things that I liked. I mean, it's not a complete write-off. I think it's interesting to see Saul. And by the way, I think they are for sure using the de-aging tech because he looks way younger at the beginning of this episode, and it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting seeing him being so like emotionally driven and being such a blind spot for him. I think he probably works on that over the next 16 years, and we see a little bit more of a refined version of him in the kind of more modern timeline.
For sure.
So that's interesting. Getting obviously more of Indara than just like 2 seconds and then her death is nice. That's a nice change as well. And then I guess the big like distinction in perspective, right? It's like, oh, well, the Sith quote unquote perspective on one side, not really. Being episode 3, and then you get the Jedi perspective here in episode 7, and it's mostly just that the message here, my takeaway, is something that I think we already knew, which is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Mm-hmm. Or noble intentions, as they say.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to see their motivations kind of come around, like, you know, because we were a little unsure about like why they were there in the first place. Like, there were moments that I was like, okay, I appreciated in this episode, but overall it was not my fave.
Well, it's okay because we have Travis Mitchell in the chat here,
really?
longtime friend of the show. Good to have him. Asking us how's it going, but more importantly that he really liked this episode, loved this episode. So somebody's back in this. Unfortunately, neither of us really loved it. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing good
no,
here.
There were good moments for sure.
There are some good moments. We'll get into that. Before we do, I want to unpack one thing, which is like when we at the beginning of the season we caught up with Torben. He had taken the vow of silence, right? And then obviously Indara's murdered right away. And Kalnaka's murdered, but he kind of went off and was hiding on that planet, right? We get to understand, we're supposed to understand why they made those decisions, or get better understanding of it. Here's what my takeaways are. You tell me if you agree, if it A, seems accurate, and B, makes sense from a character motivation perspective that they would have gone and done the things that they did later in life. So Kalnaka, he had his mind invaded,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then committed violence against
Yeah.
his fellow Jedi because of it. That seems like a good reason to self-exile yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I think he just felt too dangerous, and he's like, well, I don't want that to ever happen again. And also, I feel like it was just having to see Torben's face every day was probably a lot.
Yeah,
You're just
maybe.
like
That's
constantly
true.
reminded of like that you failed kind of as a Jedi, and your own self
Yeah,
was used against you and your
True.
friends.
So that one I think works. I mean,
Yeah.
it's also harder because we don't speak Shriwook, so we don't know what he's saying or like a lot really
You
about
can tell.
his
You can tell he's
motivations.
crying at the end.
He's
He's
upset.
like doing the Wookiee like pout. Yeah, like you hear Chewbacca do that when he's like mad or sad.
Right.
Like, yeah.
But either way, but we don't know much about his motivation, like his character beforehand. I mean, he's a tech kind of guy, which is kind of a fun contrast for a Wookiee,
Mhm.
right? Which we're used to not kind of being more naturalistic. So that one's good enough. I think there's
Yeah.
it's not that deep. We could get it. The Torben one though.
Yeah.
Here's my takeaway is that he also had his mind invaded, which is but
Right.
in a different way,
Mhm.
in a very personal way that was probably very upsetting.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was weak to temptation
Mhm.
and fell to it.
Yeah.
And then maybe kind of speaking to the Torben stuff that was in that IMDb review, which is like, well, why did he do all this other weird stuff later?
Mhm.
I think he was still feeling the effects of that,
Yeah.
and that there was lingering kind of fear
Yeah.
that was kind of motivating him ultimately. So he then makes a mistake by running off to the coven
Mhm.
at night after he's like, oh, I figured out the way home. I just have to go grab these girls, and I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but
Yeah.
and he just runs off, right? And so his action in doing that is what caused all those deaths ultimately, and what led to put them in the position where they were able to make further mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe he blames himself for all the deaths of those witches, and everything else that happened there.
Mhm.
That being said, his mind was not invaded a second time. He didn't commit any actual violence
No.
against
I thought he was
anybody.
gonna have done something way worse.
Yeah. So my question, I guess, then ultimately is, what about Torben's actions here would have motivated someone to take a 16-year vow of silence?
Well, that and then end their own life at the end of it.
Oh, right, true, exactly.
'Cause to me, I'm like, to fully, kill yourself over that is a lot. I don't know. Like, I feel like not that he didn't do anything bad enough, not that there is ever.
But
anything
then also
bad enough to do
lying. I
that,
guess
but-
they were also. There was a bit of a cover up, but it's like a pretty light cover up ultimately. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So, but again, this is kind of why it's a little. We don't really get enough. Almost like it's a little convoluted with some of their motivations afterwards.
Mhm.
Because you're like, why does he need to take that vow of silence? Is it because of the whole mind invasion, he felt weak and he was like, no, I'm stronger if I'm just putting up this mental block and this like literal physical block too.
Sure.
So
He kind of turtled.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. Either way, I feel like that from a character motivation perspective is weak,
Mhm.
and I would have liked to have seen more. Then Soul, as we mentioned before, him and Andara seem to have handled it the best in terms of like continuing on their duties as Jedi without major repercussions, right? Saul ultimately took on additional Padawans, having after Osha. He's teaching at the temple, so I think in general people trust him. There was a bit of a cover up there. I think Indara sees this as again noble intention, right?
Yeah.
Her interpretation at the end is all this terrible stuff happened, but we still have the opportunity to do one good thing, which is to help Osha,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what Saul and Indara's kind of motivation is at the end, which I think you could argue could help color Torben and Kanaka's perspective, but they choose to see it a different way, I guess. So Travis's interpretation here is that Indara was an abusive master to Torben. She keeps glaring at him, lies, and flat out hits Soul. I think he was unsure of wanting to be a Jedi, but felt forced to. Like he wanted to quit, potentially, I guess. I mean, the thing is, as we know, anyone can walk away from the Order. it's unclear to me if he felt pressured to stay. Obviously, he felt pressured to lie on behalf of them, right?
Mhm.
But he also doesn't have all the information, right? He could have said all the truth as he knows it, right? And even that wouldn't have necessarily criminalized them technically, I guess. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, and I think it's partly interesting, which is that the High Council, the Jedi High Council, which has Yoda on it at this
Yeah.
time, is kind of like a specter in the background. They said yes, they said no. I want to hear what they have to say, but we never actually hear from them directly in either timeline.
Right.
So it's hard to kind of judge, what the general sentiment of the Jedi are at this time. Like, oh no, it's totally cool to walk away from the Order if you feel uncomfortable or whatever. So either way, I just feel like there's a lot of lack of motivation, especially from Torben.
Yeah.
Travis continues here. The way Indara stands over him after he's possessed made me think he's afraid of what would happen if he tried to leave. So I don't know. I mean, I think my interpretation of it of Indara out of this episode is actually much higher than it was previously.
Mhm.
She's essentially the voice of reason. Everything she says here is ultimately pretty accurate, but she's a little bit malleable. I think you would have liked her to see her kind of stick to her guns a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like she makes, I'm going to go up alone. That would have been a better decision. But Saul's able to convince her, no, we should all go up together, right? She says, no, we can't take training these kids seriously.
Yeah.
But
they're too
then,
old.
but then Saul is like, yeah, but what if they're, she didn't have the marking on her head. She's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Maybe she resisted, but we don't know, right? So she's really like, she's willing to play both sides of the fence, and ultimately puts her in a weaker position. But I think her intuition is right,
Yeah.
largely speaking. But she's kind of reluctant to act on her intuition. So I don't know. That's a kind of a black mark against her a little bit. But again, she comes out of this. We really don't know what happens to her after. She goes to continue to work on some other planet somewhere.
Right.
We don't really know much else about her career until she's murdered. So we really only know kind of what she says at the end of this episode, basically. Any other general thoughts on this episode?
No, I don't think so. I think we can, probably hop into the old recap.
Hop into the ye old recap.
Yeah.
Okay, and also we should mention, as we have obviously Travis Mitchell here, Andrew Wordna also in the chat, listening here, watching live on YouTube. We're also live on Twitch. We go live every Wednesday at approximately, we were a little bit late today, 8 o'clock p.m. Central. That being said, if like the previous animated shows on Lucasfilm, they were premiering on Wednesday nights, right? So we were record on Thursdays. So we're really at the whims of what Lucasfilm and Disney Plus want to do with their recording schedule.
Usually the day after they
typically, yes. But again, if you want, the best way to keep up with all that, of course, is to subscribe, follow us on both those, and then you'll get notifications when we go live, and on Twitter and YouTube, and you'll get updated on when things happen. For instance, like last week, I tried to post the show as I normally do on Thursday afternoons, but our hosting site wasn't allowing me to upload the episode.
Right.
So I had to do this big workaround. It ultimately meant that the podcast came out later than normal, but I was updating everybody on Twitter and Facebook about that. Ultimately, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you got it at the usual time because there was no problem with the Patreon side. Okay. Note from Travis here. Brendok was a mining planet. We see the witches wearing gold, bronze, metal, which could mean it's a cortosis mine, hence why the Jedi didn't sense them. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if the cortosis thing is going to be a through line. I feel like if that was a thing, we would have had more of a direct hint at that. Here's what we've seen from this show. They're not that subtle when it comes to stuff like that. So if they wanted to drop that seed, we would have seen something much more, I think, obvious. Potentially. But I'm not, I think that's a fair theory. Okay, let's get into the recap, as we mentioned before. So runtime, 43 minutes, but that includes the recap and the extra long credits that we got this week, which, by the way, included I don't know how we should describe it, an R&B track.
Brand new Star Wars song. First ever vocal Star Wars song?
Yeah, like this reminds me of like when in like the like the late 90s and the early aughts, you'd have like Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man, like those movies come out and they'd have like a,
Well, they
a
still
song
do
by
that.
Nickelback or whatever
Yeah, they still do
as
that.
their
I was
theme.
like, with like James Bond movies, they always do.
Yes, but those are the
Like
exception.
Adele and Billie Eilish, and like Eminem did Venom
Oh yeah, I forgot about
recently.
that. I forgot
Yeah.
about that. So that does still happen, but it's not as popular as it
Yeah,
was.
It used
This
to be
is-
like every major movie had its
Right.
like, own
Theme,
like theme song.
right, and then often play in the
Yeah.
credits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got that here too. Okay, so runtime 43 minutes, still not long enough ultimately, but given what we had here, unless they were going to include anything else other than the flashback, it is what it is. I mean, that's about the same length as the first one. Directed by Kaganato, who's the same guy who directed episode 3, and written by Charmaine DeGrate, Jen Richards, and Jasmine Flournoy. Okay. So, and then one other note here from Travis. There's the official poster with Chimera looking over the fire, which could just be made to look cool or hinting he was there. Also, probably is May's way off planet. Yeah, I mean, on was Chimera at the Coven? It seems like they would have been reluctant to just have a dude hanging around
Probably, unless
he was
lurking.
in disguise or lurking.
Yeah.
I thought maybe we'd have got a reveal of him maybe being in attendance when we saw like that weird witches thing they were doing over that pit, that hole.
Yeah.
But that was just the same as before, and we got no new information out of that. So, unfortunate. Okay. So we start on Brendock 16 years earlier. Obviously, we don't leave Brendock really for this entire episode, so that's really where we are for the entirety of it. Soul and the Jedi are on the Jedi expedition are analyzing plants. I think it's so funny how they're just shoving stuff
I
into
love
like
it. They're
buckets.
just like scooping it and like shoving it in a thing. Did you ever do
Yes.
that thing? I feel like I've brought this up on the podcast before. Where like you go to like a swamp
Mhm.
with your class. It's called critter dipping, and you like dip like a clear bucket in like the pond water, and then you see all the like things and like
Yes.
all the moss and all the plants, and you like try to
Yes.
identify everything. Like just reminds me of that.
That's funny.
You're just like shoving.
You know
stuff
what's
in a
funny?
terrarium.
One of the things that it's such a funny coincidence. So one of the YouTubers
Mhm.
that I like, obviously Eckhart's Ladder, which is a Star Wars YouTuber that I
Yeah.
enjoy. He was recently on his own podcast, Tack Path Transmissions, was talking about he had done that recently with his son,
Oh really?
and then there was like weird gross stuff in
Yeah.
there, like
So cute, though.
weird worms and stuff in the dirt and like
Yeah.
gross, really gross stuff.
Icky, but
Yeah,
fun. Fun for kids.
yeah, fun. Everyone likes like kids like seeing weird gross
Yeah.
stuff. I don't know why, but it's not.
I can't
for
wait
me.
to do that with my kid. Be like, fuck yeah, let's go catch some bugs. Shove some plants in a box, wait for them to die. I don't know.
like a Pokemon situation,
Exactly.
basically. Got to catch them all. Okay, so they're picking up plants. Don't seem to be loving it.
Yeah.
Travis here, they all look like they're regretting being Jedi when they were picking those
Yeah.
weeds. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think what we learn is that life as a Jedi isn't all lightsaber
It's not
combat
all super
and,
cool. Yeah.
and super cool,
Sometimes you
right?
get the lame jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which probably, generates resentment
Yeah.
a little bit, but whatever.
Creates discipline.
Yes.
Yeah.
We also get some beautiful shots of countryside. Obviously, as we said, it's nice when you get more on location filming.
Yeah.
Obviously, everything that happens at the witch's fortress, as Indira calls it, is on a set.
Yeah.
But everything else is shot outside and is really nice. So we get like mountains and hills and streams, forests and plains. It's like very beautiful. So
Absolutely.
I think that was great. Have no comments there. And they're using this kind of like, I feel like so they're using this different like analyzing gear. This feels like the least creative that they've been with like. It's
Right?
like
Yeah.
literally like it
Just a
looks like an
box.
ammo crate with a funnel on top and a
You
light
just
on it.
Shove things in there.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I feel like we could have done something a little bit
and,
cooler
like,
than
Kanako
that.
literally just has like a metal detector. Like that just looks
yeah,
like
yeah.
you know.
He looks like that guy on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you just go and you find like rings and like cool shit. Like,
Yes.
I want to do that so bad.
I feel like it's more disappointing than it is rewarding.
Yeah, probably, but still. But then you hear those stories about like someone who just does that, and then all of a sudden they find like
Like wedding
pirate
rings and
gold,
stuff.
and like
No one's finding pirate gold
people find
on a
cool
beach.
stuff
Yeah,
all
I'm
the
just-
time.
Yeah, doubloons.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know.
They just found like a really old ass coin or like a really cool. There was like one not that long ago where like a little girl was like diving and she found like a sword from like Viking era or something,
Oh, that's
like just like
cool.
in the water. And her dad was like, "What the hell? Like that's wild."
Um, that's cool. I've seen, but what I'm thinking of is one time when I was in Sydney, I watched this guy walk up and down the beach with one of those
Yeah.
things, and you also have, so typically if you're really good
Oh,
at
you have the
this,
bucket.
you've got the little bucket,
Yeah.
the little like scooper
Yeah.
thing that has like a funnel so you can like shift
Yeah.
the sand through, and then he just found a bunch of junk. It was literally just junk after junk.
Yeah.
I think even at one point it was like a crumpled up aluminum tinfoil
Yeah.
thing.
Probably a
It's
lot
like,
of bottle caps. And,
yeah, right. So again, I think it's, and you have to have a lot of time on your
Oh, yeah.
hands. That's the other thing. Okay. So,
But yeah, so, I mean, they could have had cooler, gave them cooler
yeah.
things, because but maybe that's the point. It was supposed to look mundane, so they didn't want to give them
Mhm.
like super cool stuff. So
Sorry, Indara mentions the hyper. This is from Travis.
Yeah.
Indara mentions the hyperspace disaster from Light of the Jedi, which we see wreckage of on the surface. Is that where that
Yeah.
the like
when she calls
ruins are?
it like a hyperspace. What do they call it? There's a specific word that she uses.
Tragedy?
No, it's like the hyperspace.
Calamity?
It's
No?
like calamity. It's something like that. Yeah, that she
Yeah.
says the word of, and that's the one that they use in the books, because when that happens, it's like a hyperspace disruption or something.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's like it's like a massive transport ship that's going through hyperspace, and it like basically explodes in hyperspace, and pieces of it come flying out of hyperspace in all these different directions and towards certain planets, and like things are getting really messed up, and they're trying to like save a specific planet because a big chunk of this ship is like coming out of atmosphere, and it's gonna like basically
It's like an
it's
asteroid.
like an asteroid, and it's gonna explode this whole planet, right? So that's kind
Okay.
of the premise of that book. But then they realize it's full of people, so they can't just shoot it and explode it, right? So they're trying to like figure out a way to like catch it as it comes out of hyperspace.
So do they have like a bunch of Jedi like stand on the planet and like stop it from falling?
There's like a bunch of things that I don't want to ruin the book, but yeah, there's like a bunch of things that they do about like trying to like shoot like cables and stuff at the right time, and they have to use Jedi.
Why are the Jedi in? Okay, because they're the only ones
They're the
who
only
can
ones
like.
who can get the timing of like knowing when this ship
Right.
is going to come out of hyperspace to like kind of catch it, right? And then they have to use like the Force too, and like all
So
this
like
different
what
stuff.
you mentioned that Travis mentioned that's where we see wreckage of on the surface. What wreckage do we see? To be honest, I don't. All I remember seeing
don't
was
know.
there is at one point Soul hides behind this like piece of circular cement. Looks like a donut with like a piece spitting out of
Yeah.
it, and I'm like, it looks like ruins, right? And I think I was like, wow, how are there ruins here if if
Yeah.
it's like there was no life 100 years ago? 100 years sounds like a long time, but if you think about it, 100 years in the future is when the events of the prequel trilogy happens, and 100 years in our past, and so in the year 1924, there already was electricity. So it's not like it's a long time ago, but it's not like Roman era.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That being said, obviously there's like a 100-year-old power generating station in Pinawa,
Oh yeah.
which is really cool. I went there recently to like, and I didn't know that there was like these big ruins there,
Oh, okay.
and you can like walk through the old ruins of this
Power station.
like hydroelectricity
that's
station,
cool.
and it literally looks like it's ancient, but it's like
Yeah.
100 years. It's 100 years
Makes
old.
sense. Yeah.
But they did kind of. I get part of it is like it was used for demolition practice, so that's part of why it looks extra blown
okay,
up.
Well, because it was blown up.
Yeah. During World War II, they were using it for
Yeah.
demolition practice. But my point is what I'm saying is that like maybe it's. I guess it could be ruins from the mining operation. And I guess potentially they were mining it before it had life.
No, because
Also,
they talk about how that there shouldn't be life on this planet because of that
Right.
destruction. It's like from what I'm like thinking is this planet had been destroyed at like 100 years ago, and they're going back there and they're like, whoa, why is this thriving all of a sudden? Like, what's going on here that's making this planet thrive? Because of that calamity, it shouldn't
Right.
be. Like, it got roasted or whatever happened. So I'm thinking that that's kind of what they're on, because they're like, why is this so lush? Why are things like flourish so quickly here? Because they kind of have a conversation about like it being something having to do with the Force, and that's why they're there in the first place.
right, the virgins.
Yeah.
Travis says, "Is Star Wars audiobook narrator Jonathan Davis in the chat?" We do have a Jonathan Davis in the
Yeah.
chat. I don't know if it's the same
We can pretend.
Jonathan Davis.
Yeah.
But also, hello to Jonathan.
Hello. Yeah.
Says, glad that we finally found out what happened.
Same,
I agree.
same.
It is nice to know that. Wish we knew it sooner. With more than one episode left, would have been nice. But yeah, Travis mentions we see big round pieces of metal sticking out of the ground. Again, it looked like cement to me, but hard to say. And again, Travis's interpretation here is that the disaster wiped out life, and upon the witches returning, brought life back, just like Mustafar in Rise of Skywalker. Once Vader is gone, trees start growing, and life returns. But I guess I don't know. What I'm thinking here is that the Virgins felt like it was a natural thing. That was my interpretation of it. That it was the moons or whatever.
I think that's what they're trying.
Created
that's what they're trying to figure out. Is like what is going on.
So so we don't know what happened. Still, that's
the
okay.
part. That's again.
It's like
thing. That's why we're just like, what the fuck? Because like, sorry to swear, but like, it's like a whole other thing is happening. So the Jedi are there for this reason because they're like, whoa, we need to take this stuff back to figure out why it's growing so quickly and well, and like all this happening, right? And then we get this other weird thing about the twins later on, and it's just like, what is happening? You guys didn't really explain anything from what the Jedi were like looking at the start of this episode and then the end.
Right. I mean, my interpretation was that the witches used the Virgins that was naturally occurring on the planet that created life to then, create the twins.
Yeah.
Right? But again, it's not really explained. I don't need everything to be explained, but because this is a core plot element, I would like this to be explained. Yes. And Jonathan mentions here, likes how we're getting a lot of connecting tissue for the witches from the Acolyte to Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Totally agree. We also had more witch stuff
cool.
in Tales of the Empire, which was nice, where we got to see like light side witches who can teleport, which is really cool. Anyway, let's continue here before we get on too many more tangents. So the Jedi meet by a fire for dinner. We get this fun line where it's unwise to insult the Wookiee's cooking, which I think reminds us, of course, of New Hope, where you should let the Wookiee win.
Yeah, let the Wookiee win.
Yeah, right. What does C-3PO said? Chains of tactics. Let's let the Wookiee
win.
Yeah. So, but no one gets upset when a droid wins, huh?
Yeah.
That's because droids aren't known to rip
someone's
arms off when they lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
So Torvin wants to go back to Coruscant. This is it's funny because this starts right at the beginning here, and I understand this as a TV show we don't have a lot of time, so we really got to hit things home. But it does feel a little redundant to hit this thing. So almost every time he opens his mouth, it's like, "Can we go home?
Can we go home? Yeah. Can we go back?"
It's kind of annoying. It's like, "Are we there yet?"
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So anyway, so he wants to go home. He doesn't really like this job. He thinks it's beneath him, essentially. I just wish we were doing something important. But as we just talked about, we learned that the planet was cataloged as lifeless 100 years ago, and now it's full of life, which is surprising. And I do like that idea that the Force itself can create life where there wouldn't normally be.
Yeah.
It's almost... You can almost apply it to our own world, where it's like the planet Earth is so rare in how much life it has and sustains that it's almost as if we have our own Virgins here creating life. As you can, it's a cool idea. Soul, trying to give Torben some meaning, reveals that they're looking for a Virgins in the Force, which is, quote, a concentration of Force energy centered around a location.
Right.
I guess in theory you could have a Virgins in a person too, potentially.
Maybe?
But the idea that it's like you have a Force Virgins, I'm guessing that you probably would see like ancient Jedi temples, and
that's kind of what I get. And like that also scary pit on Octu, like that
right.
Those kind of like the very, very Force sensitive places.
Right, exactly. That's where you would see these kind of monuments and structures and things like that, right? It's created life on the planet. Soul's belief is that it should be studied and protected, and that to find them is a noble mission. And he says nothing could be more important to the Jedi, which I think is a slight dig at obviously what we find out later, or what we see of the Jedi later, which is that politics are more important to them, and that the study of the Force itself should be their primary, endeavor, their guiding light, right?
Yeah.
So, we get a shot of the moons here when they talk about the virgins, by the way, which gives me that fits like, okay, they were doing the ceremony when the moons were aligned. We have the twin concept, obviously, and then they talk about this virgins thing, and then they showed the moons. To me, that's a kind of direct hint, give enough evidence for me to be like that there's a connection between that.
Yeah.
Um, maybe the moons themselves are the virgins, and that when they align, they like shoot force energy at the planet or something. I don't know. Anyway, the next day, research continues. Saul and Indara discuss how distracted Torben is, and how he can't really appreciate the virgins because he's too young and too kind of like headstrong, and it's kind of like one of those. It's like the version I could think of this is like, imagine taking a kid to like Jazz Fest or something.
Yeah.
It's like they're not old enough to appreciate this music. They think it sounds like crap, and it's like you'll like it. You'll understand it more when you're older, you know. But like when you're a kid and someone says that to you, you're like, ugh, Jesus. Nothing could be more annoying. I remember hating it when people said that stuff to me.
That's so true.
And turns out they were all right.
Yeah, it's just
about
like
it.
different levels of culture that you just don't appreciate when you're of a certain age, right?
Yeah, just he's young and impulsive,
Yeah.
and he's a kid, right? Not like a kid, but he's
He
he's a
wants
kid.
to go fight bad guys.
Yeah. It's basically what he said, actually. Yeah. And so we have a lot of conversation between Saul and Indara in this episode. I think they're the best parts of this episode. She admonishes him for revealing this information to Torben, that he kind of like gave him the answers to the test, right? Saul basically said, well, he was kind of unbalanced and I wanted to rebalance him. And she's like, well, it wasn't your job to do that. Do not confuse Torben's feelings for your own, right? I guess the sentiment being that she could sense that he was also a little unsettled or bored of this mission, and that what was keeping him involved was the idea that, okay, well, we're working for a virgins and that's cool. So it gave him meaning. So he thought he could do the same for Torben. And then I love this line, which this kind of sentiment kind of comes back a few times in this episode. Sorry, not this line, but the following one. I do not tell him answers to ease his mind. I teach him to seek answers for himself. Right? I think this is a good Jediism. We talk about Jediisms every once in a while in the on the show. This is a good one, right? It's I think particularly relevant today when we talking about things like media literacy, for instance, and our ability to interact with things like the Acolyte, and understand what the show is trying to say, and even like news literacy and being able to differentiate between misinformation and disinformation and the truth and all that kind of stuff. So I guess her lesson here is basically like, I want to teach him to learn how to interpret these things on his own, to find balance on his own, and if I just give him the answers, he's going to continue to look to me for the shortcut, right? It's kind of like don't feed the wildlife, because they're just going to come back here and want more.
Exactly.
So you kind of have to teach a man to fish, as it were.
Exactly.
Any other thoughts on kind of Indara's kind of coaching here she's doing with Saul?
No, it's nice. It's I feel like she's also teaching him as a Jedi Master. Like this is how I teach my Padawans. It's a good thing to know, right?
Because you don't have one.
Yeah.
Right. Because he does rub it in.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of you can't just tell them all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Indara sends Saul to investigate the Northlands. Anyway, so what I was actually saying, do not confuse Torben's feelings with your own. That's the sentiment that comes back over and over again, which is Saul continues to project his own sentiments onto the mission, onto other people like Osha, onto Torben in this case, and she keeps trying to drive it home that these people are individuals, they have their own motivations, you can't control these things. And so I think it's interesting because it comes up specifically. There's like a line later in the episode that directly calls into question. Jonathan Davis, I really would have liked to have known what was happening earlier. How do you feel about them waiting 7 episodes? You missed this at the beginning, but
not great.
Not great. if I could write the show, we would have put the initial flashback, episode 1, and have it not really be a flashback at all. It's being more of a kind of a setup for the whole series, and then have this be somewhere in the middle of the series, as opposed to
penultimate,
where because it just leaves so little time.
Yeah.
Okay, so Indara sends Sol to investigate the Northlands. He takes this really beefy speeder.
Yeah.
They haven't invented the cool sleek
No,
ones
not
yet. Yeah.
Not the bikes.
Yeah, and stumbles upon the Bunta tree. He hides behind some ruins. I guess this is unclear to me if this is ruins from that disaster or ruins from the
Right.
mining or whatnot. And we watched the first scene from episode 3 again, from this time from a different perspective. We continue to follow Sol as he takes in moments we've already seen. This again might be frustrating for some viewers, which is typically I like to think of when they reference Rashomon, right, which is the Akira Kurosawa movie where you see an event happen from 3 different perspectives.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And if you've ever seen what was it called? The Last Duel, which is a Ridley Scott movie from a few years ago. Really has Ben Affleck in it playing this like hoity-toity king character or nobleman character. It's very funny. Matt Damon's in it, and who else is in it? Kylo Ren, our boy Kylo Ren is in there.
Oh, Adam Driver.
Yeah, Adam Driver's
Yeah,
in there.
gotcha.
It's very
Yeah.
good, but that also has a Rashomon style multiple perspective, 3 different. What was really fun about that is that when we saw the same events happening, like we would say, okay, we're gonna have this conversation, which has happened between we've now seen 3 times or
Yeah.
whatever. The conversation itself, the exact words are the same, but the shot choices are different.
Yeah.
Some of the way that like we interpret a character, like the line readings will be different. So it's
Yeah.
like, hey, I heard you like, I said this thing, I thought it came off this way, but you interpreted it a different way.
Yeah.
And so it comes off more sinister or more creepy.
Matter. Yeah. It
Right.
gives a little bit more nuance to things, and it's I like that, yeah.
Yeah, Jodie Comer's also in it, Ray's mom. Yeah, great. It's a great movie, as Travis also admits here. The thing about that is that it added so much additional layering to those moments that we've seen multiple times. This episode shows to like, okay, well, we need to kind of like set you in a time and place, and we're going to use moments you've seen before to do that, right? Okay, we're catching up to the beginning of episode 3. We kind of got a little bit of a prequel there, a prequel within a flashback, if you will, and then we're not going to give you any new information about those moments. That was just how it happened. But we're going to show you maybe a different camera angle, and in some cases, not even that. And I feel like that's a disservice to the whole concept of the multiple perspective thing, because what we see here is basically the initial sequences of episode 3. We skip through a couple things, but with no new real information here, right? Other than we see that Sol also tried to call Indara after he was spotted hiding behind that tree.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. Any thoughts on that? Like, do you?
I agree.
Everything
I
we
agree
saw
with
that
you
doubled
saying
up.
where it's like you could just run these episodes, like chop them up and run them together, and it just wouldn't feel any different. It wouldn't feel like we were watching 2 perspectives. It would just feel like
one story,
One story.
but with giving, we have to see
bit
both the
more.
Jedi and the witches.
yeah, like I
doing their
was
thing.
expecting a little bit. Exactly what you said, like a different point of view from the Jedi, but it
Right.
kind of wasn't. Like there were definitely some unexpected
Like the witches,
things
like
that
coming off
happened.
scarier.
Yeah, they
or,
did. Okay,
you
so
know.
they did a little bit.
Well, when she turned into mist.
Yeah, but it wasn't even that. It was more of like there was like extra little bits of conversation where you're kind of getting
Out of context.
you're getting the context that the Jedi are taking from it, and you're getting what Saul's taking from it, and he is taking like
the mean coral,
they're like
mother coral.
yeah, they're mean.
Right.
Like they're not treating the girls right. The girls are in danger.
I
They're
felt
gonna
like-
sacrifice them. Like that's
Here's
what
what
I
I
was thinking
think.
they were picking up on, that they thought the witches were going to sacrifice the girls, that they're like treating the girls poorly.
We talked about media literacy just a second ago.
Yeah.
I think Saul needs a lesson in
Yeah.
like interpretive skills, because if he saw what we saw in episode 3 or most of it, I think it's a bit of a leap to be like, these girls are
They're
in
being
massive
abused
danger,
and
it being like,
Yeah.
really? I don't like. Sure, there's
There's no
like,
doubt.
there's some like, if he was there listening to the whole lesson that Mother Anastasia gives to May and Osha before she pushes them over as a part of the lesson, I think it's clear to understand what's happening there and that they weren't really in any actual danger.
Yeah, but I guess maybe that's the point, is that like when he gets there, that's the point that he's getting there. So he's missing those pieces.
So it's just a series of coincidences, and that just feels unsatisfying.
I know. It's hard. It's like it's all a big misunderstanding, right? Like
yeah. And which is, that's a part of the fun of this. Ultimately, in these types of scenarios, which is like if someone, and this is in Game of Thrones too, actually, maybe some of the most fun in Game of Thrones, including House of the Dragon, which is like if someone had just said this one thing differently at this one time, we'd all be on the same page. But instead, they're doing all these things because they only have partial information, right? And that can be really fun, but this doesn't feel that way. It feels more like, again, frustrating because it feels like a massive leap of logic, especially for a Jedi to make that puts ultimately these girls in danger and kills a bunch
everybody.
Of people.
Yeah.
Okay, so we continue to follow Saul as he takes in moments he's already seen. Saul tries contacting Dara, unclear if she kind of gets the message, but it doesn't seem like she does. And he continues to pursue. Cut to title card. Saul watches as, and this is, by the way, one of maybe the most boring cuts to title card sequences we've had. It's just like, okay. Saul watches as Coral takes the girls up into the lift to their home. This is a part of the set / geometry that we never really got to see in episode 3.
Right.
We saw the Jedi come out of that hallway, but we never got to see anyone take the elevator or the elevator entrance.
Yeah.
I talked about there not being a great sense of place in episode 3. I think having the bridge of here's how you get into this fortress would have been helpful at that time.
Because you're like, how'd they get there? They showed up. Yeah.
And it's like you couldn't have given us an extra 20 seconds of them going into the elevator and showing us this really cool part, which looks like it's built partially on a real location, right? But also they built on some extra pieces onto it or added stuff with CG. So it's really cool looking. Again, would have liked to have seen that in episode 3. So instead we only get to see it here. Travis says, I love how one of Saul's flaws is assuming that if he can do good, that someone else must do something bad.
Yeah.
Or someone else must be doing something bad, right? And I think that's a part of it, which is this kind of black and white view of things.
Yeah, it's
right?
The Jedi's whole arrogance of that's why they train younglings and no one else can, because they think everybody else is doing it in a dark side way or not the Jedi way, it's not the right way, right? So it's that whole.
Well, it's imagine if the Child Family Services also had lightsabers, and got to just sneak up on people, watch them parenting their kids at home, and then forcibly take their kids from them.
For anybody who's not Canadian,
so
Child and Family Services, CPS, Child Protective Services.
Same.
It's people who take your kids away.
Yeah. It's just a crazy, it's way too much power for them to be able to have.
Absolutely.
And for someone to be the judge, jury, and executioner ultimately, right? Soul is making this decision unilaterally.
Yeah.
He does, have conversations with Indara, but he ultimately doesn't listen to anything Indara says. So. Okay, so with the console locked out, he tries to. This I thought was so funny. He's like, "Oh darn, the elevator's broken. I'll just climb the mountain.
I'll just scale it.
I'll just climb this entire mountain." And maybe it's not that hard to climb, but we get this one shot of him climbing up the face of a mountain, and it's oh no, that does look like it was really hard. But he does it twice.
Yeah, it's obviously relatively easy for him, I guess. But
I guess.
Jedi.
Maybe it's easier for Jedi to climb mountains, but if you've ever even just hiked up a mountain, never mind climbing it, it's exhausting. It takes forever.
Even if you're using a trail.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Inside, he watches from the gantry as he sees the girls doing their force training session, as we talked about. So he's the one that makes the creak sound. So there's a couple of things that we saw, weird choices in episode 3, which is just we hear a weird creaking sound, and we just cut to an empty room, and it's well, obviously they're going to come back and show us this later. It just felt so obvious, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, he's the one that made the creak. Shocker, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Next, we see the witches doing some ceremony thing, and it's another one of those why would they include this? And the problem I have with this episode is that it doesn't actually explain why they included that.
No.
Instead, we get Saul watching it, And it's just the whole thing is weird because the camera angle choices here are, as I mentioned before, basically exactly the same as we saw in episode 3, almost as if to imply that we should have been able to see Saul in episode 3.
Yeah, just in the background.
Just in the background, or
I know.
like,
I thought
you know,
that was,
watching
like,
them.
silly too. He's just like, oh, boop, just
He's
in
just
the
poking his
background,
little
poking his
pointy
out in the
head.
back, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like, no one noticed him up there. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So but also we still don't get any other indication of what's going on there, or if why he thinks that is more dangerous
Yeah.
or whatever. It gives them the interpretation that it's a force cult. Fair enough, whatever. But it's just very weird to me.
Yeah.
Travis saying, one speculation I had was Kelnaka did something to the generator, but it went wrong and exploded, adding to his grief. I mean, maybe, but we don't see that. And so I just don't think we can. It's possible. I think that's a good kind of like headcanon thing. But unless the show's going to give us that information,
Yeah.
I don't think we can assume that. This is the one thing that's funny is that it genuinely seems like when she started that fire with that book
Yeah.
that got a hand, that somehow caused the generator to
That's what I
explode.
was assuming. Yeah.
And we have no other information to assume otherwise. And everyone at the time in episode 3 thought, oh, we're going to get a better perspective at this.
Yeah.
There's no way that little fire caused the entire base to
Yeah.
explode.
And
but
it seems like it did.
It seems like it did, and it's like, well, that's also unsatisfying.
Yeah, because
and
I thought it was gonna be
frustrating.
way more. I was like, oh, there's gonna be more to it. Like, somebody else definitely fucked shit up. Like one of the, I
No.
thought for sure one of the Jedi
Nope, it
accidentally
just
did
exploded.
something. Whatever. No, her little book fire just got out of hand, and yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
so she
weird.
really did set the fire and blow up the
Killed
compound.
everyone.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, we see the explosions from far away,
Yeah.
but we don't see how those explosions actually killed everybody,
No.
as we'll talk about when we get to that part. But I do like, though, we get a lot of, like, woodwinds and flutes in this score, in this episode. It's kind of like that mystery music
Yeah.
that we talked about a little bit a few episodes ago, and it's good here, in my opinion. As he's kind of like being Obi-Wan, Detective Obi-Wan, kind of taking in the whole scene,
Yeah.
right? Anyway, back at camp, Sol reports to Indara what he found. He believes that they're a Force cult of witches. Torben assumes Night Sisters. Obviously, nice to get a Night Sisters
Yeah, I
shout
love
out.
a little Night Sister reference. So
Right.
it's cool that they're around at this time.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
that's-
yes, exactly.
Yeah, so they're established and they're kicking, which is cool.
and also like known to the Jedi
Yeah.
and aren't like they're not in like war with one another.
Yeah,
Just
they're like, okay,
you know, they're just Force witches over on
yeah. I always love the way what's her name said it in Ahsoka.
Yeah. Anyway, we also get like Indara's understanding of the Night Sisters. They don't raise younglings, let alone train them.
Right.
Um,
But like, what do you mean? Don't they?
I thought they did also. So maybe they just hide that fact from
Because
the Jedi.
they don't all just be like grown women. Like they're not just grown. But I don't know.
Travis Mitchell says we both get a callback to Ghostbusters and The Good Son, which I like. I didn't catch those, so you're gonna have to fill us in on what those references were. Saul adds that he doesn't see witches treating the girls like children and fears for their safety. So this is like the nugget of truth that he uses to build this entire fiction in his head that they're in so much danger.
Yeah.
Right? We get some other indications of like reason they might be worried about that, like when May talks about how everyone has to walk through fear and sacrifice themselves or whatever. Or it's kind of like, oh, are they going to use these kids as like human sacrifice or something? Because that would be crazy.
I think that's kind of what he picks up on that. Like I think he actually thinks that they're going to sacrifice them.
Mm-hmm. So if you genuinely thought that, you would probably do a lot of work to try to stop it.
Yeah, I would get it too. If you're like, okay, these witches are just grooming these children, and they're going to like sacrifice them or eat them or something. Like, because witches are bad, and that's
this
what
is
they do.
a Force witches, cult of Force witches that are also
which is not cool.
cannibals. They're also cannibals.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Cannibal Force
Very
witch cult.
discriminatory
Right.
of witches.
Why are you saying that most witches are all cannibals?
No, I'm saying not all witches
are
eat
cannibals.
kids.
Oh, it's a bee and legume situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All witch, not all. No, because it's not a bean legume situation. Because not all cannibals are
Not all
witches.
cannibals are witches, but
Yeah.
all witches are cannibals.
No,
Yeah.
neither of those are true.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit further, Kelnaka does have a hologram of the generator on the speeder, which Indara tells him to slice into their systems. I thought the slicing was just for the lift, though, because in episode 3 they say the Jedi have sliced into our doorway or entranceway.
Yeah, slicing is usually
it's like hacking.
Yeah, like anytime they say slicing, it's about like a door or like a lock or it's like lock picking.
I think you can slice into like systems
computers.
too.
It's like you're right, like hacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's their term for hacking,
Yeah.
which I'm glad that they don't use hacking because that would be lame. They do hacking, just they don't call it that, which is cool. Okay, so I guess again I'll give Saul the benefit of the doubt here. I think he's basing this off of a little bit not enough information to make this justification. And if you really did believe that, then and you knew this ceremony was happening that night, just go and witness the ceremony and then step in if you feel like they're gonna and if they are in actual danger, right? And if not, you get like this cultural moment where you get to like learn about another Force coven, whatever.
Maybe they're gonna throw them in the pit. So he's like,
but like again, it's one of those things. But like again, it would be better to be there than to jump to conclusions.
Of course,
right?
In hindsight, yeah.
Anyway, Indara, being a good Jedi, wants to ask the Council for guidance. Sol wants to act now, very impulsive, believing that the ceremony tonight puts the girls in danger, which makes me wonder like how much it's like. How long does it take to contact Coruscant at this time? How long does it take to get a message back and forth?
Yeah. I think they're having trouble too. Like it's like spotty reception.
Right. So anyways, he insists that they go tonight and see for themselves, right? So it's like, okay.
Yeah, makes
they
sense.
actually do. They go like, okay, we are going to go look at this ceremony, right? So they arrive at the lift. It's fully nighttime at this point. Kalnaka slices into the lift, and Indara wants to go up alone, as we talked about. She says that if you go up as a group, it could be perceived as a threat.
Right.
I think she's entirely right
absolutely.
in that, right? So she probably should have gone up alone and said, I'm just here to witness things. If things get out of hand, I will step in as legal authority here. However, we have a culture of non-interference, and I just want to learn, yada, 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 and meet these young girls, etc. And so Travis says, I get the suspicion that she didn't actually call the council. I'm not sure if you're talking about right now or later when she says that, when she denies OSHA. It's unclear because she sends everyone away. So it's possible. It's possible. I get the sense, Travis, that you don't really like Indara. You're not really giving her the benefit of the doubt on that.
I get it, though.
Really
I kind of felt the same way, though, because she's like,
they made the
we
decision
don't get
already.
To see it. And she's like, they said no. And it's like, okay, well, we didn't see them say no.
So maybe, I mean, here's the thing. I guess there's a potential possibility that in episode 8, I don't know, they're not going to have time for this, but maybe they will.
Yeah.
Saul, he bears all to the council. He said, listen, I've been lying all this time. All these other Jedi are dead. I have to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, no, Indara never told us any of this.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But obviously he does train May, so, like, why...
Or so he does train OSHA.
Sorry,
but yeah,
but so why...
and it's good. They're twins.
You know what I mean? What's the turnaround from the High Council then if they already said no? But I mean, the same thing happens with Anakin.
Well, I guess what she's saying is don't tell the truth to the council. Protect this girl's dream of being a Jedi.
Yeah.
So it's possible, and like the only truth is that her sister started a fire and killed everyone, right?
Yeah.
So
it changes things now.
It does a little bit, but at the same time, if they'd already said no, I guess the only distinction here is that, well, her life is ruined and
it's
it was our fault. So, but it's actually no, it's her sister's fault. She has nowhere to go. We should take her in.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess that's the distinction. Anyway, given the number of witches, Saul's pointing out there's 50 witches. It's a lot of witches.
Yeah.
Saul doesn't think that it's a good idea for her to go up alone. Insists that they go up together. She agrees, which again, this is another one of those moments where I think Indara should have stuck to her guns a little bit. She agrees, but says that they should stay vigilant, whatever that means. Torben assumes that based on how old the lift was, it must have been an old mining site. The Jedi enter the ceremony as we saw in episode 3, and it seems to be similar or the same shot choices as we saw in episode 3. And I guess the only thing that feels like it stands out as being interesting here is the shot of all the witches standing with Mother Anastasia in the front, which comes off as very imposing.
Right.
But again, that was also a shot we saw in episode 3. Yeah. But I guess with the context of the Jedi are seeing this for the first time, you can kind of maybe put yourself in their shoes and be like, oh wow, okay, it's impressive, right? The first change is like the first change of things. Everything happens exactly the same as it does in episode 3, as we mentioned before, uninteresting. But things start to change when we see Torben's perspective as Mother Anastasia first enters his mind, and she continues to converse with Endara. So she's able to do both at once.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And again, we really get a sense of how powerful the witches are here, which is nice. That is revealed. But again, there's still lots of questions. Travis mentions here, it is weird how they haven't brought up that May watched Sol kill her mother.
How is that not? Yeah. How I don't. That's part of it too. Like, how does she not immediately tell Osha like he killed her mom? Like later on.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
I feel like as your sister, that's the first thing you would tell them.
Right.
Not even on the bridge, but like when they meet each other again later in life, like that would be the first thing. Be like, oh, that's your master. Did you know he killed mom? Like, I just.
Oh yeah, like you should know that.
Yeah.
Right.
But
To
me,
totally.
that's kind of it is a bit of a character plot hole. I don't know what you would call
That does feel like a plot hole or a plot contrivance because they were every time that May and Osha were together, they didn't have a lot of time to
That's true.
talk.
That's true.
But they did in episode 5 to have more time,
and you think
right?
that
They had that moment where they had the conversation. She said, the Jedi have brainwashed you. Maybe she should have said, the Jedi have brainwashed you. Your master killed our mom.
Yeah.
That would have been a great time to say that.
I saw Saul kill mother, like, or whatever.
Right.
It's just like he killed. Yeah. It's just.
First she turned into mist, and then he stabbed her.
Yeah.
But it still worked.
Yeah.
The mist thing is still confusing to me. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's funny though. It does remind me of just this case came to mind. It does remind me of what was the name of the from Ahsoka, the dude with the mask that turns into a puff of smoke.
Maruk.
Yeah.
Maruk.
What's his deal?
No idea.
Is he mist? It's like
Witch?
Is that mist? Is it the same mist? Kind of what seemed like it.
Did. I don't know. Sometimes it's just like spooky black mist, and you're like, all right, what does that mean?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
Are you dead? Are you corporeal still? Are
I
you
don't
invisible?
know.
Like, what's the deal?
We'll get there.
Yeah. Are you like Dracula, like a bat?
I wish it was a bat. Oh no.
Yeah.
The bat. I wish. Oh man. Just poof.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of what we do in the shadows when they turn
I
into
love
animals.
it.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
I love that show so much.
So good. Maruk. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So the Jedi enter the temple or the ceremony. Mother Anastasia answers Torben's mind, and this is what she says to him. It's visualized as the same space, the same ceremony space, but empty, with just Torben and Mother Anastasia in it. Torben, Jedi Padawan, son of paupers from the planet Bonadon. Do we know anything about the planet Bonadon?
I don't know.
Not
that
planet
I-
Bonadon. Let's find out. I'll ask Wikipedia here.
Yeah.
But the mention of paupers does remind me of The Last Jedi, because because remember when Ben is talking to Rey about her parents?
Yeah.
He's just like, he was basically saying that they were, I can't remember what the exact words were, but it was very similar to like filthy junk traders.
Really drunk. Yeah.
That's maybe my favorite.
Filthy junk
The
traders.
way he says filthy junk traders
Yeah.
is so grilled into my mind.
Yeah.
It's so funny to me. Filthy drunk traders.
Yeah.
But he doesn't call them paupers, but it's like the same idea.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably traded. What is they traded you for drinking money?
Yeah.
Bonadon was the chief port world of the corporate sector and the primary world in the Bonadon system, boasting 10 gigantic spaceports. It was a strip-mined planet at the end of the Hydean Way. The densely populated planet housed many exotic species from around the galaxy, including humans, obviously. Very exotic. Okay, so cool lore connection there. You've traveled so far only to be trapped on this planet. So here's my interpretation of this, and maybe you can tell me what you're thinking. I think that yes, okay. Kylo mentions them being buried in a pauper's grave on Jakku. I knew that was said.
Okay.
Thank you, Travis. I just got distracted by the filthy drunk traders line, which always just injects itself into my head when I think of that scene. Dead in a pauper's grave. He was being such a dick.
Yeah.
No wonder she didn't join him. Maybe he was a bit nicer about it.
Yeah.
Still thought the Rey Nobody idea was better than Rey Palpatine, but
Agreed.
what do I know? Anyway, here's my interpretation of this Mona Anasea thing.
Yeah.
She's doing the same thing that like any Darksider does, which is like prey on people's insecurities.
Absolutely, yeah.
And she right away reads his mind and is like, "Oh, you want to go home? So let me." Just like every time we've seen someone be tempted to the dark side, it's like I can give you the thing that you want, a shortcut to power, or or your girlfriend will never die. Promise me you'll never die.
Yeah.
I promise I'll never die. Whatever you want, they have the power to give you. Right. So she's saying here, you are a strong and good Jedi, right? So playing to his ego, but you have natural powers that you suppress. And this, again, a little bit of the, just tap into the hate and anger that you're feeling, and you too can be powerful. Do you wish to escape this planet? I can help you, right? Only I can help you, right? We get a brief glimpse of what is happening in the real world, quote unquote, and it's like he's kind of watching things as if he's underwater, kind of. It's all like muffled and stuff. She continues, you wish to return to Coruscant. Your master denies you, right? Putting Indara into that villain role, right? Similar to what we saw of, Chimere with Osha basically being like, your master never told you were powerful in the Force, right? They lied to you, right? I would not keep you from what you want. This felt oddly sexual to me. I would not keep you from what you want. I would always let you have what you need.
I got a more like mother vibe from that than a.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I got from it.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
But I get what you're saying.
That maybe speaks more about me than it does anything else.
Creep.
Yeah. What? Why not ask me? Go on, ask me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, I think I like the writing here.
Yes.
It's subtle enough, but pointed also. And gives us, again, despite I think there being parts of this that are still left a little bit too ambiguous, is this moment, this invasion of his mind, enough to force him to take a vow of silence for 16 years?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like it is.
I think it's more about the bring him to his knees kind of thing. Like he...
Yeah, see, I'm not the only one. Travis says here, hold on, not to cut you off.
No, it's
but
fine.
I also saw that she's preying on his desires as a man to have love with the way she's kind of like flirting with him, right? Okay, see, it's just a dude thing.
Yeah, it's fine. Dudes are, I don't know. We got in a whole discussion about dudes being gross on Twitter the other day, so it's fine.
What, about the pee thing?
Yeah. See, now you're going to have to explain it. You can't just say the pee thing on a podcast.
Yeah, but pee on toilet seats.
Yeah, I don't get why you guys don't wipe your pee off toilet seats.
No. Most people do. But like, here's the difference.
In my opinion, when I go into a neutral bathroom.
Okay, but I'm not talking. To be clear, I wasn't talking about a neutral bathroom. I was talking about a men's bathroom.
Oh no, I'm talking about like a bathroom where anybody.
Okay, well, that
uses.
wasn't made clear because.
Why would I be in a men's room and care if there's pee on the seat?
I don't know. Women come into men's bathrooms all the time.
That's fair. That's true. We do that.
But like, if I sometimes, especially at a bar, it's crazy.
I get it.
It's just like it's piss everywhere, and it's like. What?
I understand why you wouldn't wipe
obviously.
it because you're all just standing and peeing. But if you're going into like a single-use bathroom and you piss on the seat, why do you not wipe it? So like in that
scenario, that's crazy because it's like,
that's what I mean.
How is there so much then? Is what I like. That's what I'm imagining. Anyway,
sorry. That's what we're yelling about.
It's not just the pee
on
thing.
Twitter,
Yeah.
Anyways,
we figured since that place is so gross, Twitter that is, we might as well just make it more gross. Yeah.
But no, that makes sense. I mean, she probably was a little flirty, a little whatever, like playing to his desires.
Yeah, again, trying to,
But yeah, I think
him.
his whole issue is that when she says to Neil, he's like, I want to return to Coruscant, and she says Neil, and he does. And it's like he's
why does she say
down
Neil,
to,
by the way?
She wants him to submit to her. She wants him to like submit to what she's saying. She has power over him and influence over him. He's kneeling to her. It's kind of like if you kneel to a different king or you kneel to a different, you're surrendering, right? It's like it's a power move.
Yeah.
And I think that just messed with him because he was like, oh man, like I'm supposed to be a Jedi, and at like this tiniest moment of uncomfortability and weakness, I just like gave up to this witch.
Luke would have just cut him right in half.
Yeah. He just like didn't even try to fight her. He was
right. As Luke said, you didn't even try to fight it. Yeah. Yeah, but Luke was wrong about that, so that's okay. He contemplates like the whole situation, right? He kind of like he's tempting her. He's kind of thinking about it. It looks like he's going to resist, but ultimately he doesn't. He says, "I want to return to Coruscant." She says, "Kneel." His eyes go black. She gets kind of complete control over his mind.
Yeah.
Right. And we return to the real world again, and this is when we kind of things line up with what
we saw before
in
of his eyes just
episode
going
3.
black and him
Yeah.
collapsing. But
Right.
it is cool to me that he was kind of possessed and that was happening the whole time, that he's
Yes.
just standing there. So that was actually a really interesting perspective a little bit. 'Cause it's like, oh, okay, it wasn't just like that moment of her doing it for show, like, oh, look what I can do. It's like she was already doing it and the other Jedi didn't even know.
Yeah,
so like
that's cool.
that's a little bit more like sinister than before.
Yes.
Which is very cool.
Yes. So in that case, I liked that we got something
That
new.
was new. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what I mean. Like I liked the new things that we got, but some of the stuff wasn't like new
It
enough.
wasn't that new.
Yeah,
Some of the stuff
yeah.
wasn't really that new.
Yeah.
Yeah. Travis says, I thought I had after episode 3 was since there's no men, that the witches took DNA from men or were imprisoning them, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's unclear. This part that's
is
frustrating
a Night Sister
because
thing.
to capture dudes and then
Well, they like because the Night Sisters are like a matriarch society, and they only use the Zabrak men for breeding, and only the strongest ones.
right.
Yeah, like only the strongest fighters and stuff. So.
Oh, and Travis wanted to chime in on the pee thing. He said he stands over the toilet, not in front of it, which solves the problem, which is hilarious. It's funny to think. Sorry, Travis. And just to be clear, I do wipe the seat. I think that's important to note. I'm not a.
I don't
I'm
know.
not
There are a lot
wiper.
of, like I said, villains in that thread later on. You guys are disgusting, and I'm out of here.
The bad boys of Twitter came out.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even know why I asked. It sounds like I should have known what I was getting into.
I wanted more people to reply to my pay scale thing, but no,
No.
I got nothing.
No.
I got a couple likes, but that's all I
Yeah.
got. Okay, so we catch up to what's happening in the real world again, and that basically ends it. We leave and we meet up with the Jedi again at their ship. Indara is like talking to Torben. He seems pretty shaken up, but he doesn't say anything. She chats with Saul, saying it was clever to say to test the girls. She wants to use that time to talk with the council. I thought this was a fun kind of like example of misinterpreting people's choices, right? Again, Indara, don't confuse your desires with his, because he didn't do that to buy time. He did it because he developed this emotional connection with Osha a little too quickly for my money, right?
Yeah, way too
He was like stalking her.
Yeah.
A grown man stalking two
Okay,
young
I don't think
women.
it's creepy. But I think
It is a little
yeah.
creepy. I think it is a little creepy
Fair.
because then he's like, she's right in this scene. He's like, I feel like she's just destined to be my.
Yeah, I feel like he's like
my
really searching
Padawan.
for a Padawan right now. Like he
Yeah.
really wants one, and he's just
Oh,
kinda...
it's like he's baby crazy, but
yeah,
Padawan
yeah,
crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Here, this is Travis also being a bit of a creeper. I picture the Jedi walking to a room with a bunch of men kneeling with their eyes black, the women just using them for their DNA.
Yeah.
Their DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah, gross. But that would be too dark and gross, Travis. Come on.
You know how mad that would make the Star Wars
You think?
community?
If a bunch of women in
If
charge
they were
of
just like
dudes.
farming man DNA, they would lose their absolute collective shit.
Well, they already did, so it's
yeah.
like whatever.
No, I
at
just
this
mean it
point.
would make them lose more of their minds. Like, oh, they're treating us like cows.
Almost at that point, it's almost rather. It's like the angry we can get them, the better. I feel like at
It's
this
true.
point. It's like, anyway, so Saul reveals that he feels a connection to Osha and that she's meant to be his Padawan. And Dara doesn't think that they can take the test seriously, as the girls are already too old to join the order. Obviously, it's something we've heard before. She continues by adding, quote, "The coven will never leave them." I think this is the weirdest line of dialogue in the entire episode, if I'm being honest. The coven will never let them leave. They're so insular, so strange. What do you mean? You've been treating them like they have, like, they're like, there's different. Even later in this scene, she's like, ceremonial markings are customary in many cultures in the galaxy.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yada, yada, yada. Giving all these, like, benefit of the doubt. But, like, she's so judgy here.
Yeah.
They're so insular, so strange. It's so weird because, A, we've never heard her talk like that before or again. And it adds nothing because she doesn't act on any of that feeling that she obviously has if she actually feels that way. And it doesn't inform any further choices. So very strange choice, in my opinion, to include that line of dialogue.
Yeah, I feel like she's just kind of picking up because this is after like Torben has been possessed a little bit. That she's like, whoa, this is a lot weirder than I thought it was. So I think she's just like, they're too witchy and weird. They're not gonna let these kids go. Like, let's just
Right.
like, bail on this because what's the point?
It's not worth the
Yeah,
paperwork.
it's like they're exactly. They're too old to train anyway, and they're absolutely not gonna be able to like let go
right.
of this.
And even if we wanted to, they're not going to let them leave.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what they're saying.
yeah.
But again,
But I get
the
yeah.
inclusion of it could have
So
been fine.
strange.
The coven will never let them leave. That
Yeah.
would have been enough.
Yeah,
But they're so insular, so strange, is really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Travis, sounds like it could have come from Kirk's.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're so insular, so
Strange.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. I haven't done a good Kirk impression in a while. It's good. Anyway, Saul points out that they were marked with dark magic. Again, another example of jumping to conclusions here, although accurate technically. And Dara, again, being the voice of reason here, rightfully points out that ceremonial markings are customary in many cultures in the galaxy, but she's too malleable. She's too willing to like go with the flow and be convinced here, because Saul notices that Osha didn't have one and believes that that's a sign that she's not safe.
Right.
And Dara says, oh, well, that's a good point, because she could have tried to resist, and that could mean that she's unsafe.
Yeah.
But there's no way to know.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, man, just pick a perspective or pick a point of view,
right.
and like,
Stick
if
with
you
it.
truly believe that we shouldn't be training these kids and that they're not like, and we should leave these witches alone, you should commit to that concept. Given that you don't have any additional information. Yeah, what you saw was weird, but that's not enough to go on. Saw's final argument here is that Osha is indeed in danger. Who else, if she is indeed in danger, who else but the Jedi will protect her, right? It's their job, their noble intentions is to protect these girls. But again, you don't know that A, they want to leave, and B, that that they actually are in danger. That you can't just take people from their parents without evidence. You know what I mean? Anyway, so he says, "quote I believe she wants to leave with us." And then again, this direct through line to this projection that Saul's doing. Do not confuse what Osha wants with what you want, right? And I think this is kind of like his number one takeaway lesson here that I don't think he's really learned even in 16 years later.
No.
Any other thoughts on anything so far?
No, you're right. It is a little clunky, kind of through there with our conversation here. Like, it's weird that she just kind of bends so easily.
And more of Torben's perspective on like having his mind invaded
yeah,
would have been
nice.
nice.
Like, 'cause I would have liked to see him like have a conversation with Indara about that happening.
Yeah, like help her.
Yeah,
like
help
she,
him
as her
reason
master,
it.
should coach him through dealing with that.
Exactly.
Right.
Or at least we could see her not coaching him, and then maybe that's another reason, right? So it just would have been nice to see him trying to deal with that.
We don't get enough time with either of them to be
No,
able to make that
no.
call. Okay, so the next day, the day after they test, so the day that they are testing the girls, we get some more beautiful shots of the landscape, and then we see Torben meditating. And I guess my interpretation of this was that he's fortifying his mind, as we hear him talk about later. We get to. Did you see this little like camper trailer that they have, like behind Torben here?
It's cute.
Yeah, it's fun. Very funny. Travis is out.
Signing off.
He's outie of Audi 5000.
Yeah.
I think that's what they call it. Fun stream. Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks, Travis. Always appreciate
Love
you joining.
having you in the chat.
Yeah, always fun. And again, welcome to everybody.
Yeah.
Looking forward to
Yeah.
more folks in the chat, maybe for the next series. Okay. So we see the little camper trailer. I thought that was funny. The witches arrive for the test, and we now see May's test. So again, this is something new, as we didn't see last time. We only saw Osha's test. And we thought at the time it's weird that we didn't see May's. And we thought, okay, we'll probably see May's in this front, and we do indeed. Torben asked to see take May's blood. She agrees. Again, just to know that we got blood samples from both sisters. And so we go straight to the point and get right into the test. She's right away lying about the images. I thought it was funny when she just tries to lie about another one. He's like, well, the image hasn't even appeared yet.
Yeah.
Right? Which I guess is the big this big hint that she's been trained to lie.
Trained to lie, yeah.
Right? Indara asks about the Ascension, right? Like, what is that? What's the deal there? I thought this was nice. I thought this was a good performance from Indara.
She was very sweet to her there.
Yes.
Yeah, which is kind of nice because we don't get to see that kind of sweetness from Indara.
Yeah, Carrie-Anne Moss comes off as very soft.
Yeah, she does.
Even though earlier, I mean, every other time she's very much like the boss
Yes,
Jedi,
yeah.
but she comes off very soft as she's dealing with the kid here. And she tries to endear herself to May so that she'll open up,
Yeah.
and it works, right? So we learn that Mama says ascension means that Osha and I will lead the coven. That's why I have markings like Mama. But your children, how can you become leaders? And she says, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then again, that's frustrating. I think the audience, which is like,
Yeah.
we're getting information here, but we're only
Not
getting
really.
partial bits of information, right? And this is something I think we already kind of knew. So this isn't really giving us anything that we didn't already know.
Yeah, and I also don't get why we couldn't have had this in episode 3.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a great point.
yeah.
Mama said that, you know what, we could have just done this whole thing
In one episode.
in one episode, given us both
Yeah.
perspectives, and that would have given us enough information, and we wouldn't have had to retread things. So, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, Travis giving us one last tidbit before he takes off. The Ghostbusters moment is when Coral disappears and starts yelling at them like Gozer.
Yeah.
Them fortifying their minds like the Ghostbusters, only the Destructor was a Wookiee instead of the Stay Puft
Stay
guy.
Puft.
Okay,
Ah,
yeah.
I like it. I like
Okay,
it.
fair enough. That is good. That is a good.
Very Ghostbusters.
I haven't seen Ghostbusters in a long
It's
time,
true,
but
me
that's
neither.
good. Yes, I do like the line. You shouldn't have brought him here. That's a
Yeah,
cool,
that was a
cool.
very good. Not him.
Not
yeah, you're
him.
Like, oh shit.
Not you.
Not you, right?
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Not you.
Dun dun dun. Wurr.
Yeah. Rage Wookiee.
Right. Yeah. Fun. Yeah.
Mm.
So again, we don't get an answer on the whole what exactly is Ascension thing, but it means that they're going to lead the coven. And how exactly? Like, I guess the interpretation, my interpretation of it was, okay, you're going to go through this process. This officially makes you witches. You're going to be in line for the leadership,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to guide you through what that is. So as you grow,
Yeah.
you can be able to. At some point, when
You
I'm too
take over the
old,
coven.
you'll take over.
Yeah.
And I think, they're getting this from a girl because the next thing they said is, Mama said that everyone must walk through fear. Everyone must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny.
Yeah.
I think, and then the look that Saul
Yeah,
gives,
he's like, sacrifice.
he's like, whoa, I don't.
Yeah.
That's not a good. It's a red flag.
Yeah.
I think their interpretation is like, well, those two things together sound like bad news.
Yeah, it sounds
right?
like they're gonna throw you in that pit.
But they don't have full. They don't have the full information here, and they're basing this off of the word of a girl,
Yeah.
of a young
Yeah.
girl, right?
Like a 10-year-old.
Yeah. Okay, so Indara thanks her for the information, and they let her go. Once they're alone, Saul points out that May was instructed to fail and asks to try a different approach with Osha. And she agrees, and we see that in episode 3. Now, cutting to when Saul gives Osha a pep talk at her test, we continue the test where we previously cut away. So this is no new information.
No.
However, this time she gets the answers right. This is something that we didn't see. And Indara looks inward. She kind of does this kind of like soul-searching thing for what she thinks is right
Yeah.
to do here. And maybe this is a hint that she was making the decisions all along, and the council wasn't involved. Oh, she's already losing her voice. Okay, so let's continue. Afterwards, Indara tells Torben to run the blood samples. She's going to wait for word from the council. This is maybe where you can get the interpretation that she didn't actually wait for word from the council and was just soul-searching herself to figure out what to do. And then ask everyone else to go back to do the field work. Imagine being in a situation with 4 switches and being like, go pick some more moss.
Go pick more weeds, actually.
Yeah.
There's some cool rocks over there that need
Not
scraping.
Not great coaching here from Indara. Saul insists that Osha pass. Oh, sorry. Insists that Osha pass the test, but Indara only says that she'll let him know once the Coruscant makes the decision.
Yeah.
That evening, as they wait around for the camp, Saul's pacing back and forth, very impatient. He feels something is wrong. He's getting like a bad
feeling.
Bad juju, bad feeling, right? What do you think he's sensing here? Like, what is he sensing that's wrong?
Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest. I think he's just, I don't know if he's
I think he's sensing
necessarily-
his own anxiety.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I feel like he's just impatient. He's just anxious.
Right.
He's
like, this is taking too
yeah, he's
long.
just feeling-
We should have an answer already. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's just, because he wants to know, right? Because it's his Padawan that he wants. And I think
Right.
he's just, And, he's, as a Jedi, he's probably not used to feeling that level of impatience. So
Right.
it's a little,
Something is wrong. It's you.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Tara arrives and lets them know that the council said no. Quote, they will not sanction bringing the twins to Coruscant or separating them from their coven.
Mhm.
And if this is actually from the council, it's the right
It
decision.
makes sense. Like they're like,
Yeah.
no, leave them be.
It's a hands-off approach.
Yeah, like
It's essentially a non-interference policy.
they've always had that,
Right.
even with like other force-sensitive children. If the parents say no, they don't just take them.
Right.
Right. Like
So
yeah.
it's like, don't split them up. We
Yeah.
don't think we should take them here because by doing that, you're splitting them from their parents,
Yeah.
and they clearly don't want them to go. So we're better off leaving them as
Yeah,
is,
and we'll just keep an eye on it.
and we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
But not what Soul
No, that
wants
totally
to hear.
makes sense. If you have like two twins and one doesn't want to go, they're like,
100%.
don't split them up. Like
100%.
Yeah.
Things get really interesting here, though, in a second, because Torben points out that there's still something dangerous about the witches. He's obviously he's obviously annoyed because of the whole mind invasion thing, but is mostly concerned about whether they're able to go home. He's like, well, okay, if we're not able to take the girls, like, can we at least go home?
Yeah, can we leave?
And they're like, and she's like, no, and that pisses him off, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the continued through line to that like thread of his character here.
Mhm.
Saul continues to vent his frustration about the situation, reminding her that the girls are not safe. He wants to talk to the council himself, but he's denied.
Mhm.
He insists that she's passed the test, but Indara reminds him that he coached her to do that. You know, if she didn't do it on her own, you
Yeah.
had to tell her,
Yeah.
and that kind of like taints the test.
Mhm.
Quote, do not alter this little girl's destiny because you have formed an emotional attachment to her.
Mhm.
This, I feel like, is another great Jediism
Yeah.
here, and I think entirely accurate, which is like, you have too much influence over the rest of this girl's life.
Yeah.
If you do anything here, it can completely change everything about what is going to happen to Osha.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're basing this off of selfish motivations, right? So when we talk about like the destiny versus choice here,
Mhm.
right? Soul is denying destiny or choosing to implement his own destiny onto this. I see that she's destined to be my Padawan,
Yeah.
and that means that I'm going to not deny potentially her own choice, potentially the choice of her mother, all these other things,
Mhm.
right? And it's just a fascinating kind of
Yeah.
look at that.
Yeah.
So he gets really upset at the implication that he's just doing this for selfish reasons, right? That's not what's happening
Yeah.
here, right? And he says he wants to do what's best for Osha, and the great line, which is, you don't get to decide that,
Yeah.
right? And again, I like Indara here as being this voice of reason, but she really should have just committed to
Yeah.
this.
She
And-
sent it home a little bit harder, being like,
Yes.
no. Well, and you also maybe should have been like, yeah, let's pack up and leave, because that would have probably saved
Yeah, like
a
there
lot.
was too much of the temptation
Mhm.
to make massive mistakes
Yes.
here, both from my Padawan, from you.
Yeah.
Kalnaka just
Yeah,
whatever.
everyone's
but
riled
yeah.
up. Let's go home. Like,
Yeah.
reset.
Come back later. Maybe send a different
Yeah, with
party,
clear heads.
right?
Mhm.
Maybe send like a diplomat
Yeah.
Jedi who can like
Yeah.
interact with them in a more kind of measured way,
Yeah.
right? So at that moment, the blood tests come back. Optimal timing. This is where things get really interesting. Torben reveals that the M count is extremely high. I kind of wish they just said midichlorian count here. Anyway, because I feel like the M count thing came in later as like,
Yeah.
we want to make it cooler,
Yeah.
but like the term midichlorians was used in episode 1,
Yeah.
and I think it would have been
cool
cooler
to use it again. Yeah. that's
here
true.
too. Whatever. Very force sensitive, extremely high,
Mhm.
right? He continues with surprising concern that their symbionts are the same. They're exactly the same, which would be impossible without manipulation, despite them being twins. So, what the hell is he talking about?
What is a symbiont?
Yeah. So I looked this up. The closest I could get was a Wikipedia article about symbiosis.
Okay.
So obviously, when we talk about the Force, right? The Force is a microscopic life form that lives in all things, and it's a symbiotic relationship because it gives life, but also lives off of life.
Right. Okay.
Right. So here's the line from Wikipedia: symbiosis is a mutually beneficial relationship between living things. Such relationships were described as symbiotic, and the parties involved in the relationship were named symbionts. Species in symbiotic relationship could not live without the other, and would die without the partnership.
Gotcha.
They talk about the Gungans and Planet Naboo and yada yada yada. I, I'm struggling here because I don't know how that reflects into what we see on the screen. His little tablet, which is like two little logos overlapping, and they're the same logo.
Yeah.
So I am email us towerbabblepodcast@gmail.com if you have any theories, or at me on Twitter at towerbabblecast on Twitter, because what the fuck are they talking about here?
So to me, it sounded like they're not necessarily twins. That it is one person who has been split into.
Right.
In like,
oh, good connection to Game of Thrones, because that was actually something that they said in Game of Thrones a couple days ago.
Oh, okay.
One soul, two bodies.
Yeah, which is kind of similar to this. I feel like they kind of go into them a little bit more detail, like right after this, where they kind of talk about how it's two consciousness, like one person but two separate consciousnesses.
Yeah. So I guess my assumption is that like everyone's forceness has like a unique fingerprint.
It's like almost like a unique DNA, right? So you
Right.
like, but I know that identical twins. I'm almost positive identical twins do have identical DNA.
Right. Exactly.
In our world.
Right. So
But
in this case, the distinction between them
like
being
an
identical
extra
twins,
thing, yes.
it's extra identical because they're what's supposed to be unique.
In everyone.
I mean, it's convenient for Torben to know this information.
Yeah.
Right? He just knows that even twins don't have identical
which is like a
symbionts.
thing that would have been nice to like be explained to the audience, because like, are we just supposed to know this as an audience? This is what we're like.
Well, no, I mean,
hashing
they're
out,
using
but-
it as this like expositionary dialogue to be like, this is information that is more meaningful,
Yeah.
and they obviously continue here.
But to me, it felt like we were already supposed to know it.
I mean, maybe. Either way, I think it's confusing
Yeah.
because I think the term symbiont is used in a weird way here,
Yeah.
and I just think it's confusing.
Yeah.
And if it is like a forced fingerprint situation, I don't think they did a very good job
That's
describing
kind of
that.
what I mean. Yeah.
So impossible without manipulation, right? So Soul jumps right into the idea that the twins are artificially created. So this idea that, to me, it seems like a weird leap to go from, oh, they have the exact same symbiote, it has to be manipulated in some way,
yeah.
to they are artificially created people. Seems like a leap of logic to me. But maybe not if you're a Jedi, if you have this information, but
Yeah.
it's too
I guess
it's
because
too
you wonder
much.
like how else does that happen though? Like if it's impossible,
guess
without
cloning?
manipulation or cloning, like even cloning, it's like okay, so this is not a natural occurrence.
Secrets only the Sith know.
Yeah. So it's like okay, that's extra spooky because it's like, well, who did the interfering, right? Somebody
Yeah,
had to have interfered.
Right, and again, it could go back to the, there's obviously the Force dyad thing here. There's
Yeah.
the stuff from Last Jedi with Palpatine connecting Rey and Ben, and maybe having a sense that they were a Force dyad and trying to create that.
Well, that and the whole Anakin thing too, right?
Right, so in this
it's
case-
like, we're getting blips of that. So
So maybe in this case, it could be that same thing, or it could be just the witches. But again, we don't know.
I thought we were at least going to find that out in this episode,
So
but
well, me too.
guess not.
So Andara, jumping off this same idea, continues the thought, thinking that it could be done by, quote, tapping into a power dense enough to split one consciousness into two
There we go,
bodies.
that's what I was thinking of. Yeah,
Which
it's like splitting one soul into two bodies and one person
guess.
into two bodies. You're
I
one
feel like
entity.
I think the use of the term consciousness here is also weird.
It is weird. Well, remember, there's theories people thinking that they're the same person and that it's
Yes.
like one person.
It was like a Fight Club situation.
Yeah, kind of thing.
So they were right, but just not in the way they
And
thought.
not in the way they thought, exactly. And that's why they're so connected with their twin stuff, and that's why they can see kind of each other. It's almost like that dyad because they're the same person.
Yeah, but like to say that you have the same consciousness to me means I don't know. You feel
Yeah.
like they'd be more similar.
That's like
then.
having the same brain. Like
Yeah.
it's just like they should have always known that the other one was still alive.
Right, because I think the one thing that we understand about identical twins is that they have unique consciousnesses.
Yes, exactly.
Right? That they're not literally the same person.
No.
That they are unique
And we've
in
already
that way.
proved that OSHA and May
Exactly.
are not the same.
Exactly. So this is why it's so
Yeah.
confusing to me. So anyway, they basically connect the dots here, saying only a virgins could create that type of power, and that at the mention of the word virgins, Torben's like, aha, that's it. That's my ticket out of
Yeah.
here. and then jumps on a speeder and is out of
He's
there.
like, I'm gonna go get these girls. Like, so
Yeah, it is. He doesn't really feel like he's thought that through. My interpretation here is that he's either still under the influence of Mother Anastasia, or it's just like leftover
I think
anxiety
he's
from that
just
experience.
So like ready to get out
He's
of there. That
over
he's
it.
like, oh, if I go like get them and we figure this out now, like that's my ticket out of here.
Yeah, but like his master says to stop,
yeah,
and he doesn't.
No.
So like, what's his plan there?
yeah,
You know. Another mistake I think Indara makes is allowing Saul to go after him, and not
It should've been
herself to go after him.
Yeah,
She should have said, "I'll go after him. Take the ship with Kalnaka. We'll
meet you there.
meet you there."
Yeah,
Right. Okay, so we get some fun shots of Sol and Torben on speeders. Looks about the same as it did in 1984 or whatever it was. Cut to the girls having a fight that we saw in episode 3. That's when like, why are you so different? Why are you like this? Again, another example of that they are different. So like cutting from they're the same consciousness to they're obviously not.
Yeah.
Interesting choice, maybe intentional. And then we cut that with again the speeder stuff. We also see Osha acknowledge that she wants to be a Jedi. Again, repeating episode 3 beats here. But again, I think purely so we can set up the timeline and where exactly we are in the course of the evening. Next, we get a new scene where Mother Quarrel throws May to the ground and gives her a lesson on protecting herself from the Jedi, urging/ordering her to stop Osha from leaving, and then tells her to get mad.
Yeah.
Which, feels very on the nose dark side stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We also see the council decide what to do. This is something last time we saw her chat with the council. It was Mother Anastasia talking about whether to let them go and take the test.
Right.
This is after she says, "We'll consider your opinion," yada yada. And then we get to see more of the council, including, which I don't think we saw before. Maybe we did. I don't know. A Twi'lek with tattooed Leku, which is kind of cool.
Very cool. Yeah.
One of the elders says, "Osha is a child, but the girl has yet to discover the power that she holds. It's not her decision to make." And then Anastasia's response is, "But is it ours?"
Mm-hmm.
Which, and again, I continue to respect Mother Anastasia as being a very measured person, telling, giving agency to the children, saying that they shouldn't use violence, all these things, right?
Yeah.
Good leader, right? If they'd taken time to talk with her more, they would have been able to, maybe come to some understanding.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Exactly.
So she says, the girl has yet to discover the power she holds.
Mm.
What do you think that means? The power of man?
Yeah, the power. I'm assuming because
Yeah.
because May hasn't or Osha hasn't
She hasn't done the
hasn't done the
ascension.
ascension, but Osha has. So it's
Right.
Or sorry, I can't. My brain.
Yeah.
You know
May
what I
has.
mean.
Osha
Yeah,
hasn't.
she hasn't done the ascension, so she doesn't know the power that she has yet because she hasn't accepted it.
Yeah, but does May know?
I don't know. She might not know either her full potential,
Right.
but still, we still have.
But also,
not
what does that
seen-
power mean to the witches
Yeah.
exactly? It's also unclear to
Yeah,
me.
I feel like we still have not seen Osha use the Force in this show.
I think you might. She says that she sensed those
She
bugs.
can sense things, but we haven't seen her like force push or pull anything or like actually use the Force.
That might be.
Yeah.
No, I think she does when she's a little girl with the little
she does.
butterfly.
I mean, maybe when she's little, she's
With the
kind
little
of
butterfly, she
manipulating it a little
does.
bit. But I just
Yeah.
feel like we always see May as like being able to use
As
it
an
so much
adult, I think-
stronger, but
I assume that she did it when she was in
Jedi
school.
yeah, but she's like lost it
Right.
since. Because
Yeah.
remember when she's trying to get Pip,
Yeah, she
and
can't grab him.
and
Yeah.
so I just feel like she can't use it as well.
Right. I mean, that could be a mental block.
Yes,
though.
yeah.
Another member of the council says, "You cannot allow Osha to go. She has chosen it. It's what she wants."
Mhm.
Right. Again, giving the girls agency.
Yeah.
And these elders basically saying that you have to deny that. Deny her their agency. They're not smart enough. They're too young to make those decisions.
Mhm.
Which I think is a valid. Like, you can't just let kids make all the decisions
No,
for themselves.
Of course not.
So anyway, it's fair enough, but and then you would sacrifice our future for the wish of a child. My children are our future. The wish must be considered.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, the talk of the power that they have yet to discover, their future. What do they mean by like the future of their leadership, the future of their entire? Like, are they supposed to be like the first of more children, or what do they mean
well,
by
I
that?
think that the kids are their future, right? So it's like
But,
they're
like-
the younger generation, and it's.
But there's only two. There's only two
I know
of
there's
them.
only two of them, but maybe they'll do it again if this works, right? Where maybe whatever they did to manipulate bringing
don't
these
know.
kids about, they might do more of that, being like, okay, cool, we can just self-replicate.
This is
And-
so. This to
but I
me
get what
is
you're
so
saying, where it's like it's
vague. It's so vague.
and clunky, and you're like, so why am I sitting here and having to like hash this out? Like, why
Yeah.
can't we just like have a little bit more dialogue here too?
I don't get it. Another elder says, "You may be their mother, but you're also our leader." And I think I do like this answer from Mother.
Yeah,
Right now,
I
I
choose
choose
mother.
mother.
Yeah.
Right, to give my children agency.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Cut to May destroying the console. This is so funny. I thought this scene was hilarious. She just has like this metal rod and just like smashing this thing. So she destroys the console to the lift, screaming in rage, which is basically indulging her tantrum. Right. She announces that the witches that no one can get in or out. And Coral has the rest of the witches arm themselves and prepare to confront the Jedi. I'm a little disappointed that how much of like a pure villain she becomes in this. I thought she was more interesting as kind of like a layered character with a
Yeah,
with
me
someone
too.
who has maybe like a fear of the Jedi and has motivations but is being counseled by Mother Anastasia. But she's just so willing to like give in to her like fear of losing these kids that she would just become a straight up bad guy here.
Yeah.
Really. So. Down at the base of the mountain, Torben says the lift has been knocked out. Soul reaches out with the Force. What's going on here? He's able to like hear the conversation that May and Osha are having at the top of the mountain using the Force.
Honestly,
is this a new power?
don't know.
This is a new power,
again,
right?
this is another one of these things where it's just like kind of confusing and.
I do like the cool piano twinkle we get though
Yes.
when he uses the
Yeah.
Force here, and then he's like thinking. He does like the Professor X. He's basically doing a Professor X move
Yeah,
here,
right.
and
So it's like you can listen through
the Force.
rock and steel and everything else.
Yeah,
I guess. He's
I-
got Force ears.
But like, it feels like that would be a really convenient tool to use more often.
Right. And to hear more details.
Yeah. So this is that. It's a little bit of a piss off to me. Like,
yeah. It's like too bad he couldn't use that to hear Mother
It's-
Anastasia
it's
saying
a-
she wants to let her go.
yeah. To me, it's another plot contrivance a little bit, and it's a power that I
Well-
think is cool. Like, it's a Jedi power that makes sense, and I think is fine to be able to use the Force
Yeah.
to like understand what is happening elsewhere at that exact moment. Sure, right? It's kind of like more
Yeah.
enhanced sensing.
I also just
Right.
feel like it's a way out to make it be like, oh, look, this is another way things got confused. This is another way that he took things the wrong way and it went poorly.
Right, because I guess they needed this because he was following Torben to stop
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Right, but when they get there,
Oh, she needs my
he's
help.
like, "Oh, she needs my help," and then he's like, "Okay, Torben, you're with me."
Yeah. Exactly.
Right, and so that feels like a weird change too.
It's
So
just another one of those like, oops, if they had a little bit more info,
yeah.
this wouldn't have happened. But
Anyway, he does warn him not to let the witches into his head again. He's like, "Okay, cool," and we'll just climb this mountain super quick.
yeah,
So cut to May stealing Osha's book and then staring at the flame. Again, in episode 3 stuff. Inside the Jedi ship, Indara asks Kalnaka if he's able to jump down since there's no room to land the ship. He agrees. Her goal here is to prevent Torben from creating conflict, right? But by the time she's dropping off Kalnaka, the conflict has already arisen.
yes,
And to be honest, Sol was the one who's responsible for that. So, Coral has the woman prepare for battle. Mother Anastasia arrives wanting to know what's going on and reminding Coral that they were not to use violence.
Yeah.
But we get this really badass line with anger in her voice. Coral replies, quote, "And I told you I would die before I let the Jedi take my children." Right?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I mean, it reminds me of episode 3 when she's like, they're not really your children, they're our children.
Yeah.
Right? So, little selfish there,
Yeah.
and you're making these decisions without talking to me.
Yeah,
So
talking to
little
the
step,
other
you're kind of
mom.
stepping out of line here.
Yeah, yeah.
May lights Osha's book on fire. Again, episode 3 stuff. It grows really quickly, and we see she gets scared. She tries to like stomp it out, but because like the lantern's like filled with oil or whatever, it causes the fire to grow further, causing an electrical fire, I guess.
Yeah, and then that just shoots through everything.
And that shoots through
Yeah.
everything, and then leads to the
everything
reactor.
exploding.
So we talked about this at the top. I don't know if we need to repeat it much, but like, I think this is stupid.
Yeah.
Because it looked like this is a base built into a mountain, right? This is all rock.
Yeah, like how does
right?
it what does it spread? What is catching on fire?
Do the wires catch
I
fire?
guess.
And is that enough to
The other
override?
electrical panels are sparking other ones, and those ones are overheating.
Is that causes a feedback loop or
I
something
don't
on
know.
the?
But again,
whatever.
it's like
Gobbledygook. Again, just a little bit additional, like,
Yeah.
take a beat here.
because it looks like
Help
the
us understand
hallway's on
why
fire.
exactly
You're like,
why.
what? Like, okay,
Yeah.
what's on fire?
Was there? There's no carpet there.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know what's going on. So, just taking a second and just giving us a little bit more understanding about what's actually happening here would have gone a long way. Sol and Torben arrive to find Mother Anasea and Coral waiting. Coral threatens them. She says basically, if you take another step, it'll be your last, which is always a great threat. And Sol tries to kind of calm the situation. We come with noble intentions, right? We talked about this at the beginning. Noble intentions, pave the way to hell. Mother Anasea predicts that Sol is there to find out if they'll allow Osha to join them, Jedi. She's like, well, that's obviously why you're here. She's not entirely correct, though, because, although I do got to say, her line here is a pretty sick dig. She's like, you want to know if Osha wants to leave her family to be raised by an institution instead, right? Which is a kind of like a shout out right to his face, which is that you are not equipped to raise children.
Yeah.
You are. It's like the police force raising kids. It doesn't make sense, right? But Sol, surprising her, asked instead about the twins' origin. Where'd they come from? We really need to know.
Yeah.
It's very important, and you need to tell me
right
right
now before this.
And so Mother Anasea thinks about it, and she kind of mulls it over, and she just says in response, not answering the question, someday those noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy. Which either she can see the future, or she is just really good at kind of interpreting
the way they run things.
the way they run things, and is able to say, well, eventually you guys are going to be your own demise.
Yeah. It's
right?
gonna come back and bite you in the ass. You can only.
But
do
it just
so
feels
many
like
times.
It does feel like it's too on the nose to
I mean,
the Order 66 stuff, doesn't
a
it?
little bit, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You thought you were protecting the galaxy, but instead you destroyed yourselves, and you allowed yourselves to be destroyed. So I think to be raised by an institution instead of a family was a good enough, was a good enough dig.
Yeah.
That kind of exemplified her position on this. To add someday those noble intentions you have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy isn't needed. I think you could have done something. Those noble intentions will lead you astray, or all these other things that you could do, but to
put you
specifically point out that every single one is going to die is too much. I feel like, right? Unless again she can see the future, which she's pretty powerful, so maybe she can. But as Yoda says, the future is always in motion. So although maybe a moment like Order 66 has a big
impact.
time stamp that really you can easily. But then if that was the case, you'd think other people would be able to sense it.
That's true.
Anyway, Torben draws his saber. Sol tries to calm him, but at that moment, May comes running for help. This was weird too. Sol assumes it's Osha. He's like Osha.
Yeah.
And she doesn't say anything. Instead, she just stands there crying. And then Sol doesn't do anything. This is very awkward. I just feel like this whole thing is very awkward. Torben lights his saber. We find out that it's yellow. It's very cool. And at that same moment, Mother Anasea turns into black mist, and she seems to be turning May into mist too. What do you think is happening here?
Yeah, I'm assuming Saul thinks that she's trying to possess them again, or whatever,
or possess Torben.
Yeah, but I think she or whatever, or he thinks he's doing hurting her, or sacrificing her, or stealing her life force or something. Right? That's kind of what I got because he just immediately.
Yeah, why would you do this standing right next to him?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess she thought he should.
And why does turning into mist still make you vulnerable to lightsabers?
I feel because she's not totally mist yet. He just gets her before she's all wisped away. So she's
I don't know. I paused it, and she's mostly mist at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe she's still there, corporeal. She hasn't boop, teleported.
So, but
yet.
What is the mist?
I don't know.
Here's the problem with
Don't
this.
know what to tell you.
It does seem threatening and scary.
Yeah.
But it's entirely unclear because again, Coral turns into mist too later, and then is able to speak to them telepathically or whatever.
Yeah. Well, then she goes into Telnaka, doesn't she?
Is that what's happening?
That's what I understood, is that she like goes and possesses him.
I guess we never see her again.
Yeah.
I thought she was doing it in the same way that like Anastasia did, which is like
To just
not
leave?
inside them literally, but like
yeah.
was influencing them in like externally.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, probably because it looks cool. Like they're.
Yeah, that's a good reason. That's I mean, to be fair, that's a decision. I mean, that's a reason that
But you're right.
Star Wars
we
uses
don't
for a lot of
see
stuff.
Coral again. So is she dead?
I feel like it's possible she's still around.
Yeah. Like, did she just
And she's clearly the most dark sidey of all these
teleport
witches.
out, and the other ones were the ones that took over Kalnaka, and she was just like, "Well."
And maybe she recruits the help of the Sith to get her daughters back.
Yeah, could be. I don't know.
Ooh, okay, new theory.
Yeah, could
You didn't see a body.
be. Yeah,
So there you go.
yeah. I didn't really clock that when I was watching the episode that we don't see her again. And she
But
misses
Saul-
herself.
So Saul acts like he's like, oh shit, she's turning to mist, stabs her right away.
Yeah.
Right? Is that is that the right move?
That's
If
not
you were
the
Saul,
right
what would you do?
Like, I guess he feels it's threatening, but I feel like immediately he's like, "Oh shit!" Like,
What have I done?
yeah.
Right?
I did not think he was going to be the one. Like, I didn't
To kill his
her.
mother.
and in
her
front
mother.
of her too. I was like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah,
Like,
that is
right in
pretty
front of her.
crazy. Yeah.
But again,
Maybe she's blocked that out from her memory. Maybe it's so traumatic
maybe?
that she's like not. And like, I guess maybe that's why she's trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And
No,
has-
that makes
you know.
sense. Like, that you'd want to kill the person that killed your mom right in front
Yeah.
of you. Like, obviously. But again, that it's just a bit of a hole that like she would have never told Osha this over the times that they've been together. Like, it just that kind of bugs me.
Yeah,
a
no.
little
Well,
bit.
this is going to need to be explored further next episode.
Yeah.
So he stabs her through the chest, and then as she returns to corporeal form, we hear her say her final words are, "I was going to let Osha go. It's
Yeah.
what she wants. It's what she wants. She chose you."
Yeah.
Imagine hearing that from her right after you killed her.
Yeah.
Oof.
Ouch.
That's rough, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that's crazy to me is that Soul was the one that ultimately killed Osha's and May's mother.
Yeah.
And also what he thought was killed May.
Yeah.
Or let her die.
Mhm.
That seems way more traumatic
Yeah.
than
what
Torben went
through.
through.
And Torben offed himself. Yeah.
But he's a lot younger
true.
also at the time. It just, to me,
I still don't understand.
the outcomes just don't really line
They
up.
don't.
He killed himself because of
Yeah.
this.
And it's like, I feel like he didn't really even do anything.
He's more a victim here than anything
Yeah,
else.
Exactly.
And maybe there's an interesting
He is the reason that they go there.
There is an
Fair.
interesting angle to explore, which is that even the victims of trauma might interpret that in a way where they blame themselves
course.
and then want to escape those feelings and blame through suicide.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, in fact, I'm sure that's the case. But I don't give the show credit for that's what the message they're trying to say. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what they're
Well, and I
trying
just
to
feel
get
like
off.
there was so much more. It seemed so much more. What's the word I want to say? Like symbolic that she had this poison from her planet and
Yes.
gave it to him, and like was like, you know what this is for, and he's just like, yep.
He's like, yeah,
So it's
totally,
like,
yeah,
what?
boom,
Like,
I'm out of here.
Why? Yeah, like there's just.
And he said that they were looking. I want to give you the. What is he trying to give her? Or she's trying to give him the not escape, but
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's. Yeah.
Anyway, Mother Anastasia falls to the ground, dead. May runs to her body, crying for her mama. I find these child actors to be very annoying, to be honest. Even here, it's not a great line reading of how someone. I don't think any child would react this way to seeing their dead mother.
No.
Coral tells May to run. I thought that was a cool line reading, though. Run! And then she runs off.
Yeah.
Torben defends himself from arrows. Here's the disappointment to me. Every time we've seen bow and arrows from the witches, they've got the cool electric
the cool, like,
string.
Light, yeah, the electric strings. Yes, yes, yes.
But these are just regular ass bows with regular ass arrows. So that's a little. I mean, but we're 100 years in the past, so maybe they haven't invented those yet.
They don't have the cool ones yet.
Anyway, we get to see Torben get to do some cool lightsaber stuff.
Yeah.
He's like twirling his saber around. It's pretty
Real
cool.
Good.
Not easy to hit a Jedi with a bow and arrow.
No, it's
Yeah. Anyway, Soul defends himself meanwhile from Coral, who's like trying to attack her with her staff. he's kind of like he's not even using his saber. He's just like
he's just dodging.
defensive and
Yeah.
dodging. He doesn't want to fight. She's like demanding that he fight her, or that he fight her. Yeah. Reminds me a little bit of May later, kind of like attack me with all your power,
fight me.
right?
Yeah.
And so as they fight, the core explodes, right? And we see explosions from Indara's perspective on the ship, and we hear screaming from the witches.
Yeah.
We cut back to Sol and in Coral, and everything's destroyed around them, but they're standing in exactly the same place they were before.
Yeah.
And like still posed with like her like holding the. It's really weird.
Yeah, I agree. When you pointed that out to me, I'm like, you're so right. Like it's just like everything.
And like everyone's dead, and everything's on fire, but they're exactly. It's just. I think it's an odd choice of like staging and blocking.
Yeah.
Sol decides to slice through Coral's staff, which can get done at any time, and then Coral then turns into mist and disappears.
Mm-hmm.
You should not have brought him here. Torben's like, what do you mean? I fortified my mind. Not you. And then we cut to Kalnaka, and it's a pretty cool shot. Where it's like in the dark and then like rear lit, and he just a big roar.
Yeah.
And then Sol says shh, but it seems like he wants to say shit.
Yeah, it does. He does. Yeah, you're like, did you say shit? I'm like, almost.
They should have just let him say shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, inside we see the elders chanting. They're doing this like joint power of many dance thing. And as they seemingly take control of Kalnaka. So this is where I feel like it isn't necessarily Coral that's taking control.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why I was just thinking about that now. I'm like, because she's can still talk and stuff, and she's not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So during the fight, Kalnaka force pulls Torben into his hand and crushes him against a wall.
Yeah.
I think this is when he gets the scar across his face.
Yeah, because it looks like kind of his
claws, his
face.
face.
And he's like pushes him into a wall too. So
this really cool like save from Torben as he like goes to do like the death blow, and he like holds his like saber sideways and bound. It's a cool move.
Takes a good amount of strength to be able to probably do
hold back a Wookiee.
Well,
yeah.
I was thinking about when you're fighting a Wookiee Jedi and he's possessed. It's like even if you get rid of his saber, he's still a Wookiee. So it's like
which we see
so
by the way.
Strong, so it doesn't even matter.
He kicks a stone wall and it breaks into pieces.
Yeah. So it's like they're so dangerous. Especially Force users, it's just like even with no lightsaber or whatever, it's.
Do you think they do a good job of showing how dangerous he is as a
I think so. They do a pretty good job.
Angry Jedi wielding his saber?
I like his fighting style. It seemed again very like broadsword, hard hitting. Which
but it's also unclear if it's his actual fighting style
true.
or
it's just
you know.
that is true. But yeah, he's definitely a I would say not as acrobatic of a fighter. He's a clunkier, but he's a big Wookiee. So
he does a giant jump though. That's really cool.
Big, scary.
Yeah.
It's good. That's what we see in the trailer, right? That big
yes, that's the trailer. Yeah, I mean, like it's a cool sequence. You know, in terms of like just pure novel lightsaber combat, we've never seen a Wookiee Jedi.
Yeah, it's
fight
fun.
Like
it's really
that.
fun to see a Wookiee Jedi, even when
yeah, and it's like you can clearly like the sense of danger is very palpable.
Yeah.
Of course, we know that everyone here survives.
Mm-hmm.
So we see Kalnaka break a stone wall with his foot, as we mentioned. They both lose their sabers, and then Kalnaka tries to choke Sol.
Mm-hmm.
Again, maybe he's trying to fight it a little bit because I feel like a Wookiee could like immediately snap his neck.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. Before Indara arrives, and she does this cool like wire work force jump right onto his back. You didn't like that?
I thought it looked very vampire, and maybe it's just because it's her. I don't know.
You think it's like to the Matrix?
Yeah. That could be just because it's the actress, maybe. But
Carrie-Anne Moss.
Yeah, I don't know. There was something about it that I was like, that looked weird to me. But
I think it's like this cool save. I like.
Yeah, it was
personally.
like a neat mix between like a.
But like, where did she park the ship? Did she park it and then climb the mountain also?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, it's not clear where she came from. Or maybe she put it into autopilot and jumped down herself.
Yeah, I don't
know. Maybe they haven't invented autopilot yet.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when she pushes the wishes out of Kalnaka's head, we see all the witches like pass out.
Do they die?
Are they dead?
I don't know. That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, did she just kill them all?
Here's what I think.
Touching them, or are they?
I don't. There's no way. There's two things that I can interpret here.
Mm-hmm.
One, that I don't think she killed those witches because I don't think, or at least not intentionally, because I don't think she's not strong enough in the Force to
No.
murder all those witches
Well, and that's not
indirectly.
really a thing in the Force to be able to kill
Turn off people's brains
without touching them, without whatever. Like, it's just she just like, kind of shot their control out of Kelnaka's head.
It's possible though that it's like, again, like the Matrix. You die in the Matrix, you die in real life. But it's like if you put all of your mental energy into Kelnaka and then it gets
ripped out,
forcibly removed, it doesn't return to you.
Maybe,
and then you're just become a husk.
Yeah, I don't know.
Of a person.
Or they're just knocked out and then they just die because collapses and burns.
Yeah, to me it doesn't seem like it's not believable that every single witch died.
No. But maybe they didn't. Maybe
they didn't. That's possible. I still think Coral's alive.
Yeah.
That's my new theory.
Yeah, me too.
Doesn't like seems a little unfair to be like the only species that like we associate with bad guys is like the super bad guy.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, so Indara sends Soul to get the twins. He tries to apologize, but she's not having it. He runs off and sees the explosion that we saw in episode 3 of the core as they're standing next to it.
Yeah.
And we get the kind of, I guess, interesting but kind of more on the nose framing of him standing in the middle of them and them on both sides,
and
right?
Choosing.
Yeah, and like devil and angel on your shoulder, make a choice, right?
Can only say one. Yeah.
He's using the Force to keep them both from falling, and he's like holding up these like metal gateways, right? Walkways, and I guess the implication that he's not strong enough to keep them both.
That's what I kind of got. It's like he's not strong enough to hold up both of them.
But like,
and I think
first
he's
of all,
also trying to figure out which one's which, so he's kind of watching them yell at each other,
right?
Which is also annoying, like having to hear them be like,
"Oh my god, I know,
hey.
it's so annoying."
Fucking get it.
Also, like, back off the broken walkway. Like, why are you?
Yeah, and they're just like standing there with their arms out.
Yes.
It's just like, hey, this is like going on for way too long.
Yes,
yeah.
I agree, and I feel like now I understand why they framed it in the way that they framed it in episode 3, because it's like, this is much better framing than we saw in episode 3.
Yes, it is.
And they couldn't show us that because I guess Saul was standing there the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's weird. Anyway, he makes a decision. He's going to save only one, and he just chooses to save Osha.
Yeah.
So obviously this is a huge moment. This is like the big revelation, right? The log line for this episode is a bitter truth is revealed.
Yeah.
This is in my opinion, not him killing their mother, although that is unfortunate
I think it's
and bad.
all of it.
But this specifically is that I chose you. I let May fall.
Yeah, I killed your mom and let your sister die.
So, I actually think that's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
I don't love how it's visualized here, but what's your takeaway from this whole like decision?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's making a series of the wrong decisions to get to what he feels is like the right point. So it's like he thinks that the girls are in trouble, and they're not.
They're not
but
really.
He makes that decision, and he's like, "Well,
and that's ultimately what puts them in trouble."
Yeah. And then it's with Torben. He keeps thinking that they're in trouble, so he's making these choices of like, I have to save her, I have to save them. And again, with Osha specifically, with Osha specifically, and then when he kills her mom by accident, she's like, "I was gonna let her go. She chose you." He's like, "Okay, well now I definitely have to save her and take her with me." So it's when he comes to that decision with May and Osha, it's I think it's relatively easy for him, but I don't think it's easy on his conscience. I think
I guess like if you're in that position, you're like, I have to pick one, right? And it's actually funny. Also, like Game of Thrones, where a couple weeks ago, a mother had to choose between their son and their daughter.
Oh my god,
it's really messed up. But in this scenario, he's like, we already know he's established this emotional connection to Osha, although not so much that he can tell them apart, obviously.
No, but he thinks May has started this fire and locked her in there. And
yeah, but like, why does he even think that? Because
he heard the conversation. She's like, "You're stuck here now with me," or whatever.
Right. But he didn't see her start the fire.
No, that's true. He didn't.
So that seems like a weird assumption to make also. And then, okay, I'm holding up both of them. It's a traumatic moment.
Yeah.
If like, I don't want to say a better Jedi, a stronger Jedi, a more disciplined Jedi would center themselves and save them both.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about how big something is, as we know from how, Yoda.
Or at least yell at them and get off those fucking bridges.
Right, like, move!
Yeah.
Right? Instead, he just stands there staring and then chooses to essentially kill May
Yeah.
because by letting one of the gateway or the walkways fall, it's a death. It's a fall
Yeah.
down. Who knows how
Yeah.
far, right? Seems like a fall to the death. That was his assumption anyway.
Well, yeah.
So
It's that classic morality, like psychology and morality question. It's like
the
it-
trolley
well,
problem.
yeah, there's like the trolley problem where do you
Save one to or
Yeah.
sacrifice one to save many. But this is like, do you sacrifice May to save OSHA?
yeah. But if he hadn't done that, they
Well,
both would have fallen and died.
What's the alternative? Is like
The alternative
okay,
is-
it's either is you save May to sacrifice OSHA, or you let them both die.
Yeah.
Those are the three options.
Yeah. And it's
Obviously,
like,
both
pick the
dying
best
is
one.
worse than one surviving, so you have to pick one. And I like OSHA more,
Yeah.
so
Like,
it's gonna be
she's the one who
her.
accepted the Jedi way. And
It's
the
a
other one
shitty.
hasn't.
It's a shitty.
Yeah.
It's shitty.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the ultimate.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you're sold, that would eat at you.
Yeah. Of course.
Right.
Of course.
Maybe he's thinking like he should have been strong enough to save them
Yeah,
both. As he says, I've been waiting all these years, to.
Yeah. I've been waiting. So what
Yeah.
I would say to you if I saw you again. I've been
Right.
waiting 16 years to tell you what I would say to you if I saw you again.
Right. Okay.
Something like that.
So he's been meaning to say, what the hell is he gonna say?
I'm
By the way,
I
I picked your
had
sister.
to?
I chose your
Yeah.
sister. I could only save one of you, and I chose your
Yeah,
sister.
'cause she chose me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean that. And the thing is, here's what's really gonna eats at me,
Mm.
gets my goat. We're not gonna get to see Soul say this to May.
No.
We're just gonna get to see the fallout of that conversation, and that's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, if I'm wrong, I'll eat my words, but I'm very confident that we won't have the time for that. And we're
Yeah.
just going to use this episode as our interpretation of what Soul told her.
Mm-hmm.
So, and knowing that, if I was told that by Soul, or from Soul to May, and I'm May, we were kind of assuming that he was going to kind of talk her off of the murder
Yeah.
ledge,
Yeah.
right? This would not talk anybody off the
No.
murder ledge. You
No,
know what I'm
of
saying?
course not.
So it's like, I think he's in a worse position now than he was.
Yeah, I think he's
you know.
gonna needs to clear his conscience at this point. And
Maybe.
I don't know, and then he can be like, I'll make it up to you. We can go save May together or save OSHA together, right? I don't know. Yeah.
It's like I finally have the chance to save you both. Help me do that,
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that. But it's like that also feels like a weak motivation for May.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so back at the ship, we get nice framing as Torben enters the frame while OSHA's asleep. So they're all this camera stationary. We're in this kind of like center section of the ship.
Painting.
I like how you get like these layers.
Yeah.
You get the May on the side. It's kind of like a Renaissance painting.
Mhm.
You get May asleep on the table. You have Soul like looking after her. You have Indara in the middle having, trying to pick up the pieces,
Yeah.
understand what's going on, and you have Kelnaka in the back
Yeah.
pacing and obviously like
Distraught.
about what's going on.
Yeah.
And then you have Torben enter the frame,
Mhm.
right?
He's all messed up looking.
And he's all messed up looking, right? Torben enters to apologize to Indara. She wants she's not really having the apologies right now. She wants Kelnaka to send a message to Coruscant, so she sends him away. And she says, "We're going home. I warned you not to interfere.
Mhm.
I warned both of you."
Yeah.
Right? Talking to Soul first,
Yes.
and then Torben second, right? Ultimately, she's saying, "Soul, you should have known better." I can understand a kid, a Padawan making these mistakes, allowing themselves to be motivated by these kind of strong emotions,
Mhm.
right? But I expected better from you,
Yeah.
right? And he says, "I wanted the twins to be safe." And she's like, "With no thought of the consequences, you interfered
Yeah.
and disrupted this, and you didn't have to."
Yeah.
And that's kind of her takeaway. He says, "I had to make a choice." But what choice is he talking about here? Is he talking about the choice to interfere in the first place, or the choice to save May
I
versus
think it's all
OSHA?
of them. I think it's all of his choices throughout the whole episode. He's like,
Yeah, but he's using this as a defense.
Yeah.
He's saying, "I had to make a choice, and I
I think he
chose
chose to interfere. He's like,
wanting
yeah.
to save the twins."
Yeah.
Right? But then he could. I think it's both.
Yeah.
He's ultimately saying, "I also have to choose between the twins, and I
Yeah.
chose OSHA."
I think he chose her. He chose to save her.
Right.
He chose to interfere to get her.
At the expense of all
Yeah.
the rest of the witches and May.
And May, yeah. He chose her over all
and
of
the
that.
rest of your Jedi friends.
Yeah.
It's selfish.
Yeah, it is. It is a selfish choice, but we see that a lot from the Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Torben wants to know what to tell the council. Oh, this is funny. So May kind of like grabs Saul
Mhm.
in this act of like anger, maybe, or a moment of weakness for Indara, who's I think has been pretty level-headed, and it seems like Torben's like, stop it, but really he's not saying that. He's just like, what do we need to tell the council? She says to tell the truth. Saul's like, yeah, I agree. The truth will set us free. This is important. He, at this point, later he's like, I need to face the council, right? We know that from the later episode, on the earlier episode, but further in the timeline. I need to face the council. I need to tell them finally what's going on. At this moment in time, he was already wanting to do that.
Right.
He wanted to come clean now. And I think this is what's really interesting is that there was a cover-up, I guess. That's
Yes.
the big deal here, right? That Indara's saying, for the sake of Osha, we're going to tell them that May burned down the witch's fortress and everyone was lost.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like a lie of omission, basically, because partially true.
Yeah.
Right? And so Saul wants to face the council. He's like, no, that's not what happened. I need to tell the truth. This is so great. Quote, why would you do that to her after everything this little girl has gone through tonight, what you put her through ultimately, right? You take away her dream as well. Before you throw yourself at the mercy of the council, ask yourself why you made this choice, right? You did this because you thought you were destined to have her as your Padawan. You did this because you thought they were in danger. You did this for all these noble intentions. So what good is that if at the end of the day you're going to have the council reject her and send her away to a life of whatever?
Yeah. Like, where is she going to go now?
Right.
Yeah.
So ultimately, Indara is making a mistake by not telling the truth, but she's doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Right? Another kind of like microcosm of the good intentions lead to bad consequences. So May wakes up. Sol tells her that they're on their way to Coruscant. She wants to know what happened. Sol looks to Indara, right? Do I lie to her? What do I do? May started a fire, right?
Yeah.
So the first lie,
Yes.
right? Although not entirely a lie because OSHA saw May start a fire, right? I just, again, it's like, I think the show wants us to believe that fire was what caused the explosion.
Yeah.
But it's stupid.
It is, yeah. It is silly that little fire caused all of that. Yeah.
Okay, so cut to credits. We get the song Power of Two by Victoria Monet, Shazammed 24,000 times.
Yeah.
It's interesting choice because it's a full just traditional
It's a song. Yeah.
Right? Kind of catchy. I don't mind it.
Yeah.
We get lines like, you thought your soul was a necklace you could wear and take off.
Yeah.
All my pain is your pain. A lot of twin
Twin
stuff.
Twin
right?
Flame. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in there.
Right. But they don't. The thing that I think was interesting, and I got to give credit to Disney Plus, they didn't initiate the, go watch The Mandalorian, because it's always The Mandalorian that they want you to watch.
Oh, mine's always Ahsoka.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's Ahsoka, but it's mostly a Mandalorian for me.
Mm.
And, or it's obviously if you're watching the previous episode, it would ask you to watch the next. But in this case, it doesn't do that until all the credits are over.
Yeah.
And they're long. It's like a 2.5-minute song. So you get that, and that's part of the runtime.
Yeah.
So,
That's part of the runtime.
interesting. I'd like to understand more about like what made them decide they wanted to
that
go
was
and
a
have
different
someone like commission this song
Choice,
and
but I think I'm not mad at it. I don't know.
it's a fine song.
fine.
It's just something
It
new
is
that we've never
different.
really
Yeah, we've
seen
never
in
really
Star Wars
seen a
before.
Lyric Star Wars.
We've
song
heard
before.
traditional orchestral music. We've heard no music at all. When you really want to make impact, you just
Yeah.
cut to no music. And now we have this, which
opera.
is new also.
What-
When did we have opera?
Duel of the Fates.
Yeah, well, yeah, but
kind
not
of
as
opera,
credit,
but-
not as credit music.
No, not as credit
Yeah.
music. I just mean like there's not really words with lyrics.
It's not really opera, and those words don't mean anything.
No, I know. I don't know what
So-
you call it. Vocalizing, I guess, just vocalizing.
Yeah, or choral
Yeah,
music.
choral.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we haven't had lyric music.
Yeah, this is weird. It's not.
It threw me off. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. Again, it's a great song. It's a fine
Kinda
song.
cool. They're probably testing it out, see how mad it makes people.
Well,
feel like
it
people
didn't
are
make me
mad.
mad. I was just more confused than
Yeah.
anything. Anyway, final takeaways here. Mostly frustrating. Lots more questions than answers.
Yeah.
Answers we do get are not that interesting. and we now are left with one episode
Yeah.
to wrap up this, what was turning out to be a really interesting story that's been derailed by this mostly uninteresting, unimportant second flashback episode.
Yeah.
To me, it just smells of kind of like, I don't want to say incompetence, but it just smells of like a story decision that was made without much additional thought.
Yeah.
Right? We need to do these 2 flashback episodes. Okay. What impact does that have on the larger story? Doesn't feel like that was considered.
Yeah.
So, I think a more let me just put it this way. I think a more experienced or story team would have done something differently, or a team that would have had a little bit more oversight from leadership, story leadership,
Yeah.
either the Dave Filoni's or whoever else, to kind of help tighten things up,
Yeah.
because that's what this is. It just feels like a loose thread on an otherwise pretty good tapestry.
Yeah, that was kind of my main qualm, was just kind of the pacing and how it kind of interrupts the really cool pacing we were getting from the last 2 episodes.
Yeah, it derails the season in the worst possible time.
Yeah.
So,
but
anyway, it's fine. It's not the worst episode of
No.
Star Wars I've seen. There's some cool ideas in
Yeah,
there.
there are
But they're just like lightly touched
Yeah,
on. It's all
I know.
surface level,
yeah, so-
right?
I mean, we'll be
Alright.
back next week with
Yes.
our final
The
episode.
finale
Yeah.
of The Power of Manny,
Yeah.
which is that he's ripped, which we all remember. So,
Yeah.
okay, so next week we return to the more interesting story.
Mhm.
I assume it'll be a longer episode. I think you have
You
to.
have to.
If it's not at least an hour, I think that's a massive mistake.
Mhm.
And we'll unpack it all,
Yeah.
but that'll be next week after your
After
wedding.
my wedding, yeah.
Yeah. So a whole different Rachel will be here
Yeah.
to unpack it.
So different.
Yes. so
It'll be the
different.
first place I change my last name. No, just kidding.
Yeah, just
It
right
won't
here.
be just right there. It doesn't mean
No.
anything.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, either way, we'll be back next week. Until then, as I mentioned, follow us on Twitter at Tower Babelcast, Facebook.com/Tower Babelcast. Send us some emails if you had some thoughts on this
Yeah.
at Gmail, TowerBabelPodcast@gmail.com. And then remember to subscribe on YouTube and Twitch so you can join us for the live session for the finale. And the Patreon, of course.
Yeah.
Help support the show, keep the lights on, especially in this dark time of unemployment that I am in.
Yeah.
Or fun employment, as I prefer to call it.
And I'll tell you my Oreo cookie hack.
Yes,
So
and
it's
you'll
a big deal.
Yes,
Real big deal.
it's a big deal because you don't want to get the dark side ones
Every time.
You want to get the light
Have
side
fun
ones.
with the first box you open, but then
Yeah,
I'll tell you the
yeah.
secret on how to get the
Right.
other kind next time.
Okay. Until then, may the force be with you.